Mythos Busters, investigating the mystery, monsters, and madness of Arkham Horror, the card game.
Top of the morning, and welcome to episode 35 of Mythos Busters, where I completely screwed up that intro, but we're gonna keep it. I'm Sean. Joining me today is Ian. Hi, Ian.
Hi.
And Scott.
Nice St. Patrick's Day reference. I caught it.
Ian, he was properly cutting you off so that I could speak. So
good goddamn, this is a train wreck today. I'm loving it.
Hi, Scott. Motherfuckers.
How's it going?
Oh, it's good. It's slightly early, but that's okay. My kid actually, because of daylight savings time, my kid sleeps in till 7 a.m., which is fantastic.
Ooh, nice.
Oh, I've never been so happy about daylight savings time. So.
And not with us today is Nick, because he is still on vacation, so we'll catch him on the next one. Though he is in chat, so he's with us. He's with you, dear listener, in spirit. He's with us in chat. So we've got a fun episode lined up for us today. We've got some crazy news that the hits keep on coming. And our main topic today is going to be something a little on the lighter, more conversational side. We're going to talk about ways we hosts make the game our own. So we're going to kind of talk about maybe ways we bend the rules, different formats of play, different ways we enhance our game, that sort of thing. And then, of course, we'll close it out with a little bit of technical time. So yeah, let's do this thing. Nick is not here, so we'll catch up on some community highlights next time. Ian, what we got for news?
Well, we got a couple things. First off, the novella announcements have been coming hard and fast, and the newest, is this the fifth one already? Yes. Yeah, I think so, right? Because we had Roland, Normand, Jenny, Carolyn was announced, and then this one. Yeah, so this is the fifth and final one of this round. And then, of course, people are wondering whether there will be a new round. I think probably, because it seems like they're selling pretty well. They're keeping out of stock. So the final one is The Deep Gate, and this story is about Silas Marsh, who, like Caroline and Norman, is an investigator that is yet to be released, will be released in a future expansion, but with different signature cards, because this one has Silas Marsh's replacement cards, even though we haven't seen the originals yet. Since Silas is a red survivor investigator, I'll go ahead and let Scott read this one.
Yes. So we got Silas Marsh. He's a sailor. He's also a drifter. I feel like that's a really bad pun. But he's got 2 willpower, 2 intellect, 4
fight. God, I get it.
Yeah. 4 fight and 4 agility. Glad you're with us, Sean. And he has the reaction. After you reveal a chaos token during your skill test you are performing, return a skill you committed to the test to your hand and live it once per round. And the Elder Sign effect is +0. You may commit a skill from your discard pile to this test. After this test ends, return that skill to your hand instead of discarding it. 9 health, 5 sanity. Leave your fears on the docks, lads.
We all drift down here, Richie.
Oh, God. Seems pretty cool.
Did you guys do the thing that I did where you kind of misread how that works and assumed that the skill icons on the card that you pull back still counted for you?
No, never. I'm perfect with rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still really good, but for a solid 10 minutes, I'm like, how did this card get printed?
It definitely takes some parsing before you're like, okay, how exactly does this work?
I definitely had to ask a friend, and I was like, I gotta look at the skill test result steps, like there's 9 of them, and figure out where it landed. But I instead just asked my good friend Brian, and he's like, oh yeah, no, you don't get it. I was like, okay. But I like the ability though, right? Like, because you can overcommit. Like, let's say you have an unexpected courage, you just commit it. Oh, I didn't need it, pull it back to hand. Oh, commit it again. Oh, didn't need it, right? Like it's amazing.
I mean, yeah, because I mean, basically, you can commit that unexpected courage to every test you ever take. If you fail, then obviously you pull it back. If you succeed, then without needing the unexpected courage, you pull it back. And if you succeed only with using the unexpected courage, then you can make the judgment call of like, is this particular test worth committing that card?
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, we don't know what his class access is, but it's also very helpful for those ones that only trigger on certain conditions, like succeed by 2 or whatever.
And he's got 5 sanity, so he can run those desperate skills pretty easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And limit once per round kind of keeps it healthy,
Right.
I think, because if it wasn't once per round.
Yeah, and it's rare that you have more than one very, very important skill check in a single round. Like there'll be occasional like boss enemies that you're like, oh god, I need to hit him 3 times or this is over. But
well, even limit once per round, that means you're going to use one skill, like unexpected courage, twice, right? You can use it one time, pull it back, another time, whatever. I'm hoping he has, like Ian, like you said, like the rogue cards, like succeed by 2 or more. That'd be some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, or some kind of particular skill access, maybe like he can include 0 to 5 of whatever kind of skills.
Yeah, like if he has access to Vicious Blow, especially for the Elder Sign effect. Like, Vicious Blow is in your discard pile, you put it in there, and then you bring it back, and you play it again. Oh, man. Blowing viciously.
Silas just kind of tag teaming with Min. Silas with a backpack Min seems really good.
Yeah. How do you guys feel about his stat line? It's an interesting one.
Yeah, the 2 willpower worries me as it ever does, but I think if there's any class that can handle the 2 willpower, it's probably Survivor.
While I tend to agree, the 2 willpower with 5 sanity scares the bejesus out of me. That is like that combination of those 2 stats. Yeah, I don't think I'm actually a
Peter
fan
Sylvester
of
exists.
Yeah. Oh man, I don't know. Not a huge fan of his stat line, I don't think.
He's really going to need some fine clothes for sure for certain parlay tests, because they usually are all will and intellect. Yeah, he's pretty much like primarily focused on enemy management, right? Because all his strength is concentrated in combat and agility, and the kind of other stuff, dealing with treacheries and advancing clues, he not too great at that, at least not in his naked form.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like as long as he can take a decent breadth of skills, he's going to be pretty okay, because that ability makes him super flexible, and he does that Survivor thing of mitigating risk and eliminating unknowns, right?
Yeah. Do you go Dark Horse? Do you go Dark Horse Silas? Since maybe you're a heavy skill build anyway.
Yeah.
Not if his off class is Rogue, I don't think.
True. Yeah. A lot will depend on that.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna do the like succeed by 2 Rogue in him, if he is Rogue.
Yeah. That's true. And they have some, Rogue has some solid skill cards. And the article says that Silas is well skilled at making the most of limited resources. That to me doesn't scream Rogue, but then again, it could just be marketing speak.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be the first time that the article's not 100% accurate.
I think we need to assign Nick to again make a no asset survivor, and it's going to be Silas.
Ooh, that could be fun.
Yeah.
Nick immediately groans.
Sorry, Nick. If you were here to defend yourself, that you could, but you've been assigned. All right.
I like how he slowly breaks into saying, "Maybe I will."
It's like a group project in class. The dude who doesn't show up definitely gets the shit assignment.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and read his signature card, which is also a skill. And Sean, why don't you read that one?
Sure thing. Nautical prowess is, I suppose, level null skill. It has a willpower, intellect, and wild icon. It is innate and developed trait. Silas Marsh deck only replacement. If a chaos token with a negative modifier is revealed during this test, either draw 1 card or nautical prowess gains 2 wild icons. So the fact that this is 2 intellect icons for him, that helps.
Or 2 willpower pips.
Right.
Like it's his off class skills.
Right, exactly. It's the ones that he needs the most help with, which is kind of, if I'm thinking about all the signature cards that I can think of off the top of my head, that's a rare thing to have happen. Normally, like...
Yeah, usually it's it's buffing with your strengths.
Yes, you're bolstering your strengths.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that this is innate is really cool, because I feel like 2 of True Survivors just going to be a thing you run in Silas, which is pretty cool. This seems like a really awesome signature.
Yeah, and it could be powerful. Like, it could end up being, if there's a negative modifier, it could be 4 intellect pips. Because you get the intellect pip, the what do you call it, wild pip, and then 2 more wild pips.
Mm-hmm. Or if you already passed the test anyway, just draw a card.
Or maybe you take it back to your hand and play it on your next test.
Or you'd pull it back to your hand and use that lucky that you're holding on to because the math works out.
Or, I got nothing.
No, I got one more. Or you pull it back to your hand because you're within 2 under and you play your Look What I Found. Silas is going to be fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it gives you a lot of options. It's kind of similar to York in that way, even though they work very differently. They're, I guess, just survivors in general, really. Although Ashcan tends to be a little bit more straightforward, but Windy as well. They're all kind of in this Trixie camp.
Mm-hmm. But they all have different tricks, and they work completely differently.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, it's just...
They're oddballs.
When
Survivor to me seems like the most varied class among its gators.
Yeah, I feel like each gator is almost like a subclass. It's like, oh, you have the Wendy survivors, and then you have the Yorick survivors, and then you... Yeah.
So, Silas, of course, has his own weakness, which is Dreams of the Deep, which was the name of my prog rock album. Has the subtitle The Deep Gate, 2 will icons, and I had to take a double take because I'm like, wait, why does this...
Those ain't will icons,
Wild.
buddy.
Wild icons, I mean, sorry. Curse traded. This skill's icons subtract from your skill value instead of adding to it. If this skill test fails, return this skill to your hand. Forced, if Dreams of the Deep is in your hand at the end of your turn, reveal it and take 2 damage.
This is so cool.
So it's basically a game of trying to get it out of your hand as quickly as you can, and Dreams of the Deep just holding on for dear life, trying to get back into your hand.
So you have to mega succeed.
Yeah.
Or you could... Go ahead.
Oh, this is kind of similar to Dark Dreams? Oh God, why can't I remember Agnes's Dark Memories? Thank you.
Yeah.
Where you want to clear it, but the difference is like Agnes can just play it. Like if she absolutely needs to get out of her hand, she can just dump it. You take the doom on the chin, and you're fine. Like if you can't find a test that you can pass, this just hurts.
Mm-hmm. I think, if you're able to cheese it out, like if you find a 2 or less shroud location, you have a flashlight. You can basically, unless you draw the token that shall not be named, you're good. But yeah, you're gonna have to...
I feel like a fair few luckies are gonna get burned trying to get rid of this damn thing.
It feels similar to Min's weakness almost, because you're gonna have to commit so much to a test.
Yeah.
To pass it, like it's... Yeah.
Like a lot of weaknesses, it feels like one of those ones that's kind of dependent on the situation you're in. Like if you are lucky enough to draw it when you're in a kind of more peaceful situation with not a lot of enemies around, and or like a rats, for example, where you can just easily pass that. But if you draw this when you're in the midst of battling that big boss, that's gonna hurt.
No,
you can just keep it in your hand and suck up the damage, but if you're getting towards the end of the scenario and getting kind of low on health, then it might be a problem.
And I believe you can commit this to someone else's thing.
Oh my God, Silas is going to become the new troll build.
Well, there's also that. Wait, there's way more cards towards the troll build. We'll get to that later.
I know.
Safina coming hard and fast. But if Mark pulls a rats, you could be like, hey man, can you take care of the rats, and I'll dreams you real deep, and then
yeah.
There's an opportunity for someone else to help you out with it, which I kind of like.
No, I'm not complaining mechanically, but can someone explain to me how having weird dreams deals you damage instead of horror? No one? Okay, good.
Yeah,
He flails around on the bed a lot and
falls off the bed over the deck.
Yeah, because he's sleeping in those like hammock bunk bed style things, right?
Yeah.
That I see in all the movies. And he swings out of that. And
falling out of a hammock does 2 damage. Yeah, can confirm.
Exactly.
Or it's like really, really rough rope, and it pinches your arm hairs as you move around. You guys ever have like an old style hammock? Like, ugh, it can be real uncomfortable.
Now, I am not an art guy, usually, but I don't know what it is about this card and just the way, like, it's grayed out. Mm-hmm. Like, man, the art it's awesome. I love it. How it's just gray tones.
Like, yeah, the like light sepia tone to it against the just stark black and white weakness template is really striking, I think.
And the the wild icons are like gray and white or black and white, right? Like it's not that usual yellow goldy color. It's just it's very striking. I like it.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's really interesting.
So now we have a weakness of every player type. That's a thing now that we have.
Yeah, true. A couple of people in the chat are pointing out that maybe it's representing him slowly turning into a fish person. Did not consider that, but that makes sense.
Yeah, he is a marsh after all.
Yep.
After all, no, Zadok is the dude who tells the story in Shadow over Innsmouth. What's the captain's name? The original marsh that did the thing.
Randy Marsh?
Ovid. Yep. Thank you, Jonathan.
I was gonna say Obadiah. Is that his full name, or did I just make that up?
Okay. Quick aside though, if anyone here has not read, or it's been a while since you've read Shadow over Innsmouth, there is a really cool public domain audiobook on YouTube. And the dude who does it, I think I've mentioned this before, but the audio itself is like a transferred tape, so it sounds all kind of like record scratchy and old timey. But the dude who does the narration has a perfect voice for it, and he does the New England drunk accent so well. So when he's doing the Zadok Allen lines, it's wonderful. I will never consume Shadow over Innsmouth in any other format.
Nice, I gotta check
it out.
Sweet.
I think there needs to be the Hidden Trader expansion one day that lets you, once Silas gets defeated by Dreams of the Deep, then you replace him with a fish person. And then he attacks the other players.
I mean, that we haven't seen the back of his card. His weakness might do just that. When Silas is defeated, put X weakness into play as an enemy.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
That'd be fucked
so
up,
cool.
But it would be completely useless in solo, so I don't think that would happen.
Defeat yourself.
Yeah, but there's okay.
We can dream.
I mean, there's other weaknesses that are like completely garbage and standalone, like like cover up in Roland. Like, oh, it's standalone. Who the hell cares? Yeah, So hasn't stopped him before. But
True enough.
True. Okay, so the next article just dropped yesterday, right? Was it? I'm getting my week was a blur.
2 days ago?
Maybe the day before, yeah.
No, it was
anyway.
Yesterday. You're right. Yep.
Yeah, we actually got an article before recording instead of after. So this is The Leader and the Smuggler. This is spoiling the next 2 investigators in the Forgotten Age box after we got a peek at Ursula last time. So the first one is Guardian Investigator. This is Leo Anderson. And since we don't have our resident Guardian here, I guess the next one...
not on Mike, anyway.
Yeah, the next one in the rotation is Scott, so why don't you read Leo?
Oh boy, I gotta find the card. 1 sec. There we go. All right, so I'll try and do my best Nick impression. Leo Anderson, the expedition leader. He is a veteran and a wayfarer. Oh, I wonder if he served with Mac. 4 willpower, 3 intellect, 4 fight, 1 agility. Reaction after your turn begins. Play an ally asset, reducing its cost by 1. Elder Sign effect +2. Search the top 3 cards of your deck for an ally asset and draw it. Shuffle in your deck. 8 health, 6 sanity. Keep moving. You can die on your own time.
Nice. That's pretty much how I picture Leo talking. So,
Yeah.
I love how this game is consistently saying, like, yeah, these old bastards, they just can't move. Like, Norman and Leo both have 1 agility.
I feel like he looks to me like he feels to me like a Clint Eastwood in El
Gran Torino?
Gran Torino. That's the one.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
That's how I imagine this character. But
so, yeah.
that stat line's amazing.
He seems good. That stat line is ultra good. What do we think his class access is going to be?
Ooh.
Would it make sense to have Seeker, or do we think he's just going to get like some access to like level 0 allies from any class or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be all allies, but maybe some kind of certain trait allies. I would have to look into the ally.
Maybe
more.
certain traits.
The article makes it seem like he has some kinship to academics. So again, I don't know if that's marketing fluff or if that hints that he'll be able to like bring in those art students, which would be amazing. And
the Miskatonic traded ones.
That could be.
Well, yeah, I mean the kind of the whole conceit in the Arkham Files is that all the expeditions are funded by Miskatonic University, right?
Mm-hmm.
That would make sense.
I think the majority of our chat is all like non-unique allies, money on quantity of non-unique allies. Yeah, everyone thinks level 0 non-unique allies.
Yeah, that could be.
If he has access to Seeker stuff, I mean,
That's might be insanity.
Especially solo. Like, the biggest thing with solo is you have to find clues and fight. But if you're Guardian and Seeker, okay. I mean, I guess there is Roland, but who plays?
Yeah, so
him?
I know it's just an amazing card everywhere, but it seems like Calling in Favors was made for Leo, right?
Yes.
Double charisma, Calling in Favors Leo. Let's go.
Mm-hmm. Now, because this is a reaction and it's not like any bold action, does this mean he can play that asset without an opportunity attack?
That would be my interpretation.
Yeah. Basically, you have to have the little black arrow for it to be.
So that's even more sweet then, that you could drop someone in as needed.
Anyone else super in love with the trend toward useful Elder Sign abilities?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I love
this one doesn't even require you to succeed.
Yeah. I mean, you probably will with a +2.
Yeah, it probably.
But
not if it's not like a grasping hands that would succeed. Never mind.
Yeah, I would be happy if
test.
I would be happy if I never saw another Elder Sign effect that was just like +X, X's, whatever.
I love me some Agnes, but her Elder Sign ability just makes me so bored.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Leo's gonna be, I mean, depending on his class access or what cards he can access, but I think he's gonna be really good. The 1 agility will mainly only come to haunt you if you really just need to get away with an enemy, from an enemy for some reason. But with Guardian and 4 combat, I think he should be able to handle most of that.
I don't see. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Scott.
I was gonna say I don't see Leo Anderson as the kind of guy who's gonna run away from an enemy.
No,
you'll die at my cold dead hands.
The only other potential trip up is if it's true, like a lot of people are speculating that the next cycle has a lot of agility treachery tests because you're like doing Indiana Jones stuff and running away from boulders and jumping across pits and whatever, that maybe he'll be hurt by that. But the good thing is anything that happens, you should be able to just constantly pump out allies to soak up stuff or insanity.
Get out of my head, Ian. Out of it.
That's where I live. I have a nice cottage there.
It's scary in here.
It's right by all the meme zone.
And I also do like the ally play that Guardian has available to it right now. So we're going to look at another card, but Inspiring Presence has Leo on it. Oddly enough. So there's going to be some interesting builds that come out of him, I feel.
Yeah. Stuff like Guard Dog for 2 and even just the Guardian stuff. Yeah, B-Cups for 3. Okay, so the next card is, I guess they did our Guardian card first, but let's finish with Leo's cards first, I think. So Mitch Brown is the next one. Did you want to read that one, Sean?
Sure. Mitch Brown, sole survivor, is a signature asset. He is also an ally, it turns out. 3 cost, 2 wild icons, ally and wayfarer traded. Leo Anderson deck only. You have 2 additional ally slots, which can only be used to hold non-unique allies. He has 2 health, 2 sanity, and obviously takes up the ally slot himself. You ain't going nowhere without me, Leo, so you might as well tell me what's going on. If Leo is Clint Eastwood, I feel like Mitch Brown's Paul Walker.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks for going on that journey with me.
This strikes me as one of those, some investigators have signatures that are like, oh, nice if I draw it. This one strikes me as one of those that is like, you really want Leo to get this guy out.
You call in favors to try and get him out?
Yeah. Definitely 2 of calling in favors forever and Leo.
Mm-hmm.
And do you just get 2 charisma as well and just honestly make an ally army?
I think so.
Probably.
Man, that's gonna be amazing.
That even seems so Leo.
Yeah. Even with
do you guys play him charisma. A whole lot in Eldritch? Because that's kind of his thing there too.
Negative.
I haven't. No, he's one I don't tend to play a lot for whatever reason.
Is Eldritch the one we played at Arkham Knights on the last day there, Sean?
Yes.
Okay, that's the only time I've ever played. So no, I did not.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Right on.
Yeah, even with 1 charisma, together with Mitch Brown, you have 4 allies out on the table.
Yeah. So you can have, let's see, so Mitch Brown, 2 for charisma, 2 for him. So you get up to 5 allies. And I think general consensus is the ally slot is probably the most powerful, more or less. Like, we get a lot of the biggest bonuses from allies. So being able to have 5 of them out.
Yeah, and his ability takes away kind of the drawbacks, which is it takes an action to play allies, of course, and also they tend to be more expensive, and he kind of helps you with both of those.
Oh man, McDog3 in the chat, crossing over to Lord of the Rings territory here, just spamming all the allies.
Yeah, I mean, makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
You need to pass those sailing tests somehow. So he does have a weakness, which is I like this art. Bot and Blood is a weakness. It's a flaw. Revelation: you must either discard an ally asset you control from play, or discard each ally asset from your hand. If no assets are discarded by this effect, shuffle Bot and Blood back into your deck. We paid a terrible price for the knowledge we sought. Was it worth it? Now, I'm guessing
cost.
I'm guessing that's an art student laying dead in that picture, because it's always an art student, isn't it?
She already found the clues, so who cares?
Yeah.
This actually, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say, given that we kind of think that you're just gonna be pumping out a ton of allies, I feel like this is a weakness that's on the gentler side.
I would say so, and I think if he does, like, depending on his access to allies, if we do have, like, everyone's thinking seeker stuff, like an art student comes in, finds the clue, you're like, great, you're just a meat shield now. Bot and Blood, well, you're definitely a meat shield now, and your weakness is gone. And now you have more room in your ally slots for more art students and lab assistants and all this stuff. So,
yeah. I mean, the only time I feel like it would really hurt you is if it popped up when you only had Mitch in play, and then you had to discard him. But
yeah, then you could call.
I mean, even in that situation, you could just discard allies from your hand, right? Instead, so if you had them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't know. I think a lot of times this isn't going to be too bad.
Yeah, especially if you have, like you said, if you have Mitch out, let's say Leo can take Leo DeLuca. If you have a big guy out and you have an ally in your hand, you could just be like, oh, this one ally in my hand, you can discard that instead of the one you already have in play. And this treachery becomes basically a discard 1 or 2 cards from your hand instead of get rid of something you paid 6 resources for. So,
Yeah.
I'm really excited to make the deck of the law offices of Leo, and art student.
Yeah. I think this is definitely a weakness. You can try to game a little bit and be like, okay, it hasn't popped up yet. Let me keep one non-unique in play that's kind of expendable that I can chuck if I need to.
Oh.
Okay, so let's go to some player cards which were spoiled as well in addition to the signature. So the first one is Trusted, and I think Scott is up.
Yeah. So it's a Guardian event. It's 1 cost, 0 XP. It has a willpower pip, and it's an upgrade. Fast, play only during your turn. Attached to an ally asset you control. Attached asset gets +1 health and +1 sanity.
So good.
Is it? I'm not sold, quite honestly.
Okay, so who's your best target for this? Like, you have an investigator that can take any ally. Who's this going on?
Probably Pete Sylvester.
Okay. Definitely makes him a bigger sink.
Or
Guard Dog? Is it worth Guard Dog for an extra proc or Beat Cop?
Yeah, I mean that.
I think so.
It's 1 cost. It's fast.
I like how it's literally upgrade traded.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is, I'm looking at. I'm thinking of this in a Leo deck, and I'm like, just play another ally. You know, like instead of this card, just put yet another ally in your deck.
But what if you don't have the ally slots?
Yeah, I don't know.
I guess I was thinking of it more outside Leo, just in general, where I think it's super helpful to either get those extra uses out of Guard Dog or Beat Cop, or it's kind of, I mean, sometimes we talk about Fine Clothes as being a worthwhile soak at just 1 cost and 1 and 1, and then you're kind of essentially getting the same here, but it's fast, although obviously not protecting you against direct damage and horror, but
you also have to have an ally in play.
Sure.
Play it. Whereas Fine Clothes, you can just get in your fancy pants. I mean, I guess I think this fits better on someone like Peter Sylvester, who you intend to keep around the whole scenario. I'd be more hesitant to put this on a Guard Dog or a Beat Cop because those allies are ones you are looking to expend, and so I'm not sure I'd put the money into upgrading one of them. I'd rather just try and find the second Guard Dog or the second Beat Cop in my deck.
Because if you want to extend the use of those two, you could just play Emergency Aid.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see. I imagine that Leo's going to have some interesting allies that come out in the box with him to kind of give him some cool options. So I'll be interested to see if my opinion changes once that hits. But I agree. I'm kind of middle to low on this card at the moment.
Now, this would also be good on Mitch because you want him to stay around because the ally slots. What about Carolyn Fern's cat?
Yeah.
Foolishness?
To give it +1 health. Like, there's a bunch of scenarios that do targeted, like, do 1 health and 1 sanity to an ally you control or something like that. Like, there's some targeted attacks. I could see this being kind of a tech card against...
And maybe the scenarios in this next cycle are going to have more of that type of effect, and this sort of thing is a nice way to counter that.
Mm-hmm. Or like, what's it called? Carnival?
Yes.
Like, you're going into Carnival? Absolutely, this would be a good card. So
Innocent Revelers? Is that the objective ally?
Yeah, and I don't know if they actually say ally on them.
Good point.
However, if you do have allies in your deck, there's a lot of cards that do direct damage to... Oh no, I'm thinking of Essex County, I think. Deal damage to assets you control. Same thing as Museum.
The Claws of Steam? Is that what you're thinking of?
So anyways, there's scenarios where this is a great tech card. I'm lukewarm on it currently. But
maybe adaptable in.
Absolutely. This is an adaptable target for sure.
I look forward to both of you coming around to my way of thinking in the months to come.
I'm happy to change my mind given the evidence.
Mark down the timestamp.
I just think of that meme of that guy sitting at the table where he has Pop-Tarts or ravioli. Change my mind. He's sitting in like Central Park with a coffee with a chair at a table next to him. So it's like, come on over and talk.
So that disagreement was just a little prelude to our next one. We're about to talk about Finn Edwards. This guy is a green investigator, so I'm going to go ahead and skip the line and read him. Finn Edwards is the bootlegger. He has 1 will, 4 intellect, 3 combat, 4 agility, criminal traded. You may take an additional action during your turn, which can only be used to evade. Elder Sign effect, +1 for each exhausted enemy in play. If you succeed by 2 or more, you may discover 1 clue at your location. Never lose track of the exit or the merchandise. He has 7 health and 7 sanity.
Well.
So.
Elephant in the room.
Round 1, fight!
Okay, so let's just go over some of the stuff that's not controversial.
Okay,
7
sure.
health, 7 health, 7 sanity. Love the balance. Yeah?
Solid.
Okay.
Yes.
Elder Sign effect seems good. It'll probably proc somewhat often.
Yeah.
Like even if you do succeed, like you're usually above. So, yeah, you could discover a clue. A free action to evade at the beginning of your turn, or I mean, as an additional part of your turn, kind of like a daisy, but for evading.
And that's a very valuable extra action, because so often when my mindset is I need to evade this thing, or I need to evade these things, like running out of actions is a real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's valuable.
Yeah. We've talked before about evasion, like the thing you really need with it is extra actions, and Finn just has that built right in.
Yeah. It's a Magali, so can't complain there.
Yeah,
Great
I like
art.
the art for sure.
Okay, guys, I can't do it anymore. One willpower scares the shit out of me.
I don't think I have seen our Arkham channel on the Discord explode anywhere near as much when Finn was leaked. Or spoiled, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Previewed. Let's go with previewed.
Previewed, yeah. I understand there are people who think that you can work around the willpower, and I agree, you can.
I have a name, Scott.
Ian
I'm sitting
and
right
company, the offices of Ian and other rogue apologists. It can be such a handicap, like an incredible handicap. And I'm looking at the current scenarios we have and the current campaigns we have, and in my mind, I have like these horrible vision flashbacks of all these treachery cards and other cards. It's like, test willpower 5, test willpower X. If you don't fail, do this. And man, that is a brutal stat to have a 1 in.
So okay. Little ad hoc experiment here. I actually have the Unspeakable Oath set up on my table. I'm gonna grab the encounter deck. Let's do this.
This is fun.
Dance to the Yellow King.
Yeah.
Test willpower 3. If you fail, nearest lunatic readies, moves, and attacks you.
That seems bad.
Couple of those on the deck. Yellow Sign. Test willpower 4. If you fail, take 2 horror, search your deck for a madness, and draw it. Walls closing in. Test willpower X. X is the shroud value of your location. If you fail, either take a horror for each point you failed by, or randomly choose a set-aside monster and put it beneath the act deck without looking at it. So that's essentially like I don't know. I think you would take the monster in every case there with Finn.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
And that's all I got. But that's scary enough to me.
Well, and Frozen in Fear exists, right?
Yes.
Like,
freaking does.
That card shuts down decks with like people with 3 willpower, right? At 1, I mean, even if you throw a guts to it, now you're just even. And I mean, I admitted this in the Arkham channel, and I think I'll admit this here as well. My judgment is clouded because I've been mostly playing hard and expert lately. Like, so I haven't played a game in standard in a very long time, and so my views of stats are slightly different. So in standard, maybe you could get this to work, but I think it is huge.
Okay. So here's where
Change
I'm
my
at
mind,
with
Ian.
Yep, I've got my coffee. I've got my table. I'm going to warn you ahead of time that my only rebuttal this entire debate is going to be Frozen in Fear. So
it. Sure, that's fair, and that's probably the biggest strike against it. So one will is definitely an obstacle. I mean, even my eye twitched when I opened the article and saw one will on him. But kind of where I'm at with it is having played Skids more recently, Skid solo at least, and experiencing going through Carcosa, where he has been one of my most successful solo investigators. Just most of the time, because he has 2 will, I'm not even pumping it. I'm just taking it on the chin and knowing that I'm going to fail those tests. And Finn, and if you're looking at it that way, like, there's not really much difference between 1 will and 2 will if you're going to fail all those anyway. The main difference would be the ones that are like fail by whatever. And I think in those cases, that's why you're probably going to have Moxie with Finn Edwards. But I just think that it definitely brings up certain issues, but every investigator in this game has their weaknesses, and I don't think willpower is like uniquely crippling compared to the weaknesses that other investigators have. Kind of the whole rogue way of doing things is just let me hurry up and complete the scenario before it can do anything. Like, to take the Unspeakable Oath example with Skids, yeah, he failed some of those tests, but I also finished that scenario with like 6 doom to spare, which was way better than most other solo investigators I played. So yeah, I just think there's Rogue has some strengths that can work through that.
I will counter.
Sure.
Frozen in Fear.
Frozen in Fear.
Okay, so you may, in solo at least, or even in multiplayer.
Even I have to laugh at how ridiculous this is.
you This is our first real debate, I feel like.
Hey, Ian and I usually agree on everything. This is interesting. This is new segment of our friendship we're exploring.
Yeah, I feel like Frozen in Fear definitely is an issue. I'm not going to pretend it's not. It is for Skids, and it's even worse for Finn, because with 1, like, how often you're probably just never going to get rid of it if it gets on you. So the questions are, how often are you going to get Frozen in Fear? Someone else can crunch the numbers on how likely you are to draw it in a game. And then also, it kind of sucks, but more than likely, I feel like Leo DeLuca is going to be Finn's BFF, and basically Frozen in Fear is going to just change into turn Leo's text box to blank, which sucks because you paid 5 or 6 resources. But it really depends. Like, if Frozen Fear hits you in the first couple of turns, like, yeah, you're probably toast. But if it hits you mid to late game, I think you'll be okay in that situation.
Now, I will argue the other side of it. That, yes, he has 1 willpower, and I don't like that. But all his other stats do, like, everything the game throws at you, getting clues, dealing with enemies, and basically, I see it as, there's the treachery deck, there's the enemies that come out of the treachery deck, and then there's the getting clues and getting shit done. He does 2 of those very well, right? Yeah. Like, he can take care of an enemy. He's got 3 combat, so it's not much to boost him up to something that can kill something. He's got 4 evade, plus he's got a free evade each turn, and he's already at 4 intellect for finding clues.
Can we talk about a rogue with 4 intellect?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, he does everything else very well. The 1 willpower scares me because the treachery deck is not something you can necessarily plan for, whereas, like, you see an enemy over here or over there, whatever, okay, I need to get a gun out, I can do this much damage, you can calculate for it, whatever. Clues, okay, that location has 3 shroud, this has 2, you know what I mean? Like, you can make plans. Treacheries are like, ha, gotcha, cockbag, right? Like, it's just so
I'm gonna imagine Frozen in Fear hopping out of the deck every time like that.
Here, see, you're
twirling
Frozen
treachery.
Fear, see?
That's his canon voice now. That's his catchphrase.
And Finn is, like, never gonna bust a lockpick, right?
Why not?
Oh, like break one? Yeah.
He's at 8.
Yeah.
With lockpicks.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
He probably, other than a tentacle, yeah, he'll probably never break
I
one.
thought you said he's never going to get through a locked door, and I was like, what? He's, like, very well equipped to get through a locked door.
Excuse me?
Yes, lockpicks is fantastic on him.
Yeah. I think the thing... I think the thing for me is if you asked me like before this was designed and said, would you rather have 2 will and 3 intellect or 1 will and 4 intellect? I would have taken the 1 will and 4 intellect. Like if I'm going to suck at something, just let me be great at everything else and I'll just lean into the suckiness.
And see, that's the thing, right? Like, and the way you're saying in where playing with skids where you're just like, well, I'm going to fail this test. That's kind of how I've experienced it a bit on hard and expert, where it's like, I have a test, I'm 2 or 3 under, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to fail.
It's just happening.
Like, I hope I draw the tentacle so that I fail without anything actually happening.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
And it's quite possible that my perspective is skewed by the fact that I just don't often play investigators where I feel like I'm in that situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I also don't play hard. Well, yeah. But the thing is, okay, and then I also play almost exclusively multiplayer, whether I'm playing with other people or I'm playing two-handed by myself. And I feel like there's way more flexibility for someone else to pick up a deficit of your intellect ability than there is for someone to pick up a deficit of your willpower ability in multiplayer specifically.
You know, that is quite true because like the intellect, it's everyone's getting clues on locations, whereas the treachery deck or the bad deck like specifically targets you.
Some
Ian.
of us call it the encounter deck.
Yeah, encounter deck. There we go. It targets you, Ian, and then you, Sean, and then me, Scott. Right? It's not like a location with a bunch of clues. We are working together. It's yeah.
But that being said, I really enjoyed the conversation we had. I still think it's more of a problem than rogue apologists want to make it out to be. But I was definitely... I feel better about it now than I did when I first saw his card. So that changed my mind sign actually did something.
Yeah.
Which is what you want out of an actual conveation, right?
I still think Pop-Tarts are ravioli.
You mean instead of just yelling at each other and holding solidly to our positions the whole time? Yeah. But the cool theme part I like with both him and Skids, even more so with Finn, is it's just this total like risk style of play, and it is very swingy when you have low willpower, because you can just draw like 2 rotting remains followed by frozen and fear, which happened to me with Skids, and you're just like, okay. So yeah.
And on the flip side, when Agnes does that, it's like, all right, encounter deck, you gonna do something this game?
Oh yeah. Exactly. On the other hand, maybe you get a play where you're drawing a bunch of enemies, and Finn is like, okay, I got an additional action to evade you, or I can punch you. So, yeah, it's going to be very swingy, and so it's just going to be a game of race to the finish, which I think is fitting for the bootlegger, and he's going to be potentially even better at that than Skids, because he has 4 intellect. So it's going to be a game of can you race to the end before the encounter deck can knock you out. So it's going to be fun. That's fitting for the bootlegger who has to constantly run away from the authorities, I think. Okay.
I look forward to changing my mind. I'm completely amenable to countering evidence, but 1 willpower scares me.
Yeah, it's definitely a scary thing. So his signature is, well, one of 2 signatures, spoiler alert, is smuggled goods, and I think I skipped Sean, so why don't you read this one, Sean?
Sure. So smuggled goods is Finn's signature event. It is 0 costed. It has a wild icon. Supply and illicit traded. Illicit important here. Finn Edwards deck only. Play only if there are no ready enemies at your location. Which, I have a feeling it's pretty easy to get everything either gone or exhausted, so that's cool. Search your discard pile or the top 9 cards of your deck for an illicit card and draw it. If you searched your deck, shuffle smuggled goods, if you prefer. Shuffle smuggled goods into your deck. So that's cool. It replaces itself in your deck with the card you probably want, because you're putting cool illicit cards in Finn.
10 out of 10, amazing.
Yeah, it keeps shuffling itself back in, which is pretty good.
Yeah. We finally have something that works on illicit. So
yeah, I was just gonna say. So what are the big illicit cards right now that people would be excited to grab with this?
Like all the rogue weapons.
Yeah.
Are all of those cards illicit?
Probably yeah. Probably the biggest one would be the Chicago typewriter. That would be tasty to go fetch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and pull them up on Arkham DB here while we're talking.
Lockpicks is illicit. So speaking of, you can make sure you get that faster. Liquid Courage.
Never need a flashlight again. All right, so we've got the Derringer, both versions of it. Burglary, the Typewriter, Contraband, which... God, if there's any rogue where Contraband needs to be playable, it's got to be Finn, right?
Hopefully. Hopefully.
Knuckle Duster, Liquid Courage, which of course Finn should be able to take. Lockpicks, Pickpocketing, both levels, and Switchblade, both levels.
Now, wait a minute. Liquid Courage. Talking about him taking that. He has to test 2 willpower.
That's right. There's a willpower there. God damn it.
Oh, you're just getting rid of a card, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just hear it's fine.
Just basically change the text to heal 1 horror and discard 1 card.
Yep.
Just thought I'd bring that up.
might be an okay trade if you're playing through a campaign that punishes your low willpower with horror, as they do.
Yeah. Is there a campaign like that? Is there one that we're currently playing or anything? No? Okay.
Yeah, it's a list that I think could be filled out some more. There's a couple tasty things, but I think to really make the most of his signature, hopefully we'll get some more in the next cycle.
Well, I mean, it's the top 9, right? I mean,
yeah.
So that's a significant chunk of your deck. Even if you have a few of these, like you have a couple Switchblades, you have a Chicago Typewriter in there, maybe a couple Burglaries if you're going to play that way. I assume you'll have lock picks at the first chance. I think you're probably going to draw one of those pretty quick.
Yeah.
Especially with that signature, right?
Yeah. So I like it. I think there's just barely enough illicit cards right now, but as we get more, this will get better.
Oh, and with Sleight of Hand in there, like, you don't even need to have played it yet. Like, you can just pull it into your hand, and if you've got Sleight of Hand there too, you just feel safe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Finn has a second signature asset because he's so special. And Scott, I think it's your turn for the Trusty 38.
Yeah. So Finn's Trusty 38. Never leave home without it. It's a 2-cost asset. It has an Agility pip and a Wild pip. It's an item, a weapon, firearm, and illicit. Finn Edwards deck only. Finn Edwards deck only. Fast and uses 3 ammo. Action, spend an ammo, fight. You get +2 combat for this attack. If the attacked enemy is not engaged with you, you deal +1 damage for this attack. That's pretty good.
Dude, you don't even need Sleight of Hand for this gun.
Yeah. It has Sleight of Hand built in.
Yeah.
Pretty terrible 6-shooter with 3 ammo, though. Just to throw that one out there.
Well, he's firing 2 bullets each time. That's how you get the +2 combat.
Oh, there you go.
That checks out.
The murdered.
Yeah. Well, and you're dealing +1 damage, right? So 2 damage per shot. It's... Yeah.
I love how it works with his ability where, like, you're just going to take that free evade the enemy, and then get that damage.
Then pop, pop, pop.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, you just choose whether you're going to skip away whistling or whether you need to kill it, and then you can do the Trusty 38.
Well, and I mean, like, if you have this in hand, and you have a 6 health enemy, you can evade for a free action, or an action, but an additional action or whatever, play this down, and then do 6 damage.
Mm-hmm.
Probably pretty reliably. Like, it's pretty good.
If I didn't explicitly know that FFG's timeline was more restrictive than this, I would have suspected that they heard our podcast where we ragged on evasion and agility, and they were like, "Hey, here's Finn."
Yeah, he's gonna lean into that hard, which is gonna be a lot of fun.
They went and made knife good, and now this. Yeah.
Okay, so he also has a weakness, I guess. This is my turn, I believe. Sure. This is caught red-handed. This is a blunder trait. Revelation ready each enemy at your location or a connecting location. Each hunter enemy at a connecting location moves 1 location toward you. If no enemies move as a result of this effect, shuffle caught red-handed back into your deck.
It's like the what's the gangster card in House Always Wins? Where all
is
the
it Hunted Down, I think?
Hunted Down, yeah, and all the gangsters move towards you.
Yeah. Like that card, this is one that could potentially just screw you if you have been evading all along, and then suddenly, like, 3 enemies pile upon you from connecting locations.
Now, it specifically does mention hunter enemy.
Yeah, that's the good thing about it. And they don't attack you, unlike Hunted Down, if they engage.
Yeah.
They're just moving.
Moving, readying at your location, engaging you, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it readies enemies, but a lot of times you're going to be drawing this at the end of your turn, right? So it doesn't really matter if they get readied. If you draw this mid-turn, like last... Yeah. I guess just don't draw last action with...
Last action draw.
Yeah, avoid that.
Oh no, guys, they figured out a hard counter for Bind Monster.
Well, there you go.
I'm sure that's exactly what they had in mind.
Bind Monster was just ruling over the meta, and they decided to nerf it a bit. Yeah.
It could potentially hurt you, but I feel like it's not the worst weakness I've seen. Most times. I mean, it could potentially even be useful if you draw first action. Sometimes it's annoying that the hunter enemy is in the next location and you have to go deal with it by evading or whatever because you don't want it to move into your location and hit you. Whereas this, it could move the hunter enemy to you, you evade it, and then you move to where you wanted to go.
And this could whiff really hard, right? Like a single enemy at your location could ready. And all it took away was your bonus action, essentially, because you just had to evade it and you're done. So...
Yeah, I don't think it's too bad.
Nope.
So we did get a final card spoiled. This is
please.
Sure, you can have this, Scott.
Okay. So in your
you handle this one, Scott.
Oh,
so in your Safina Grief deck, or any Grief deck that can take road cards, you handle this one. It's a 0 cost, 0 XP event. It has a intellect and a agility pip. It's a trick. Fast after you draw a non-peril encounter card, but before resolving that card's effects, choose another investigator. Not at your location, just anywhere. That investigator is considered to have drawn that encounter card instead. Gain 1 resource.
I legit lolled when I read this card.
So good. It's so good.
Imagine painted worlding this with Painted World and Delve Too Deep, and then just have a couple of these ready. Oh my god.
Oh my god. It's going to be, I feel like we need to set up a special event at our Gen Con event where someone plays Scott's Safina Troll deck while 2 other players just try to complete the gathering.
Yeah.
And if you can complete the scenario, you win.
I'll be like that guy sitting at the table. I'm playing a Grief deck. Beat my deck.
Or Myriad in the chat brings up another good one. Play Drawn to the Flame and hand the card to someone else. Thanks, bro.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's so good.
Okay, now trolling potential aside, if you're playing this in a legit game where you're coordinating, this is also not bad.
This is what... I mean, I think Finn takes 2 of these.
You just hand it off to whoever can handle it best, right?
Yeah, like Mr. One Willpower there. He takes 2 of these.
Yeah, I hope you know that forever when I play with you guys, I'm always playing Finn and
2 of these. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. How do you like the One Willpower now?
Now, rules-wise, could you play this in solo and just gain a resource after you draw an encounter card?
Choose another investigator. It's like, what's the stand together? You can't choose another investigator, so it fails.
Right, but the gain 1 resource isn't preceded by a then. So is it a separate effect?
Ooh.
To the rules discussion forum.
Yeah, I think... Oh, man. You might be right. I'll have to check.
Because if it was a then, I would 100% agree with you, no question in my mind. But I'm not 100% sure. I'm also not great at rules, so... Anyway. Not that you would. I was just curious if you could.
Mm-hmm. You know, I honestly don't know. I'm thinking because it doesn't say then, I think you're correct. because you have to basically go through each sentence alone. There's no then or ifs or whatever. Yeah.
So hey, if you've got an investigator that's flush on draw but needs some more resource acceleration, I guess here you go.
Mm-hmm. I think. Don't quote me on that, but
Sure.
yeah.
I don't think it's information that will make a difference in the world.
No, I don't.
Sure.
I don't think you play this card solo. Pro tip.
Yeah. Someone was floating the idea in the Discord. I wish I had the name handy to give them credit, of like a Rogue and Zoe combination where Zoe is just the let me handle all the encounter deck stuff. Like, she has the let me handle this, and the Rogue is playing you handle this one because she has the 4 will and can kill anything. So you're just constantly handing off encounter cards to her while the Rogue Investigator goes off and takes care of everything else. It's an intriguing idea.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I know we ragged on Finn a little bit, but there are going to be tools that are going to mitigate something like Frozen in Fear. You got let me handle this, level 2 ward of protection from an ally. You got the you handle this one, right? There's ways to pass off these really difficult things that Finn can't deal with to an investigator that's maybe doing a little bit less that turn than Finn. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what, I'll handle your encounter card while you go and kill 2 guys, evade another guy, and get a clue. So
Yeah. I just love that this card exists. It is amazing.
me too. I mean,
It's so shout out to Casey, Mr. Trench in our Discord, because he basically called this card a few weeks ago and said, oh, there should be the counterpart to I'll handle this that's you handle this. So
yep.
Yeah,
he totally called it.
So that's about it for our news this time. Lots of meaty stuff for us to tear into there. I guess I am hungry. Nick was accusing me earlier of being hungry because I kept saying tasty, and now I'm saying meaty and tear into it. So this is the episode, the one where Ian gets hungry.
All right. Well, so I skipped over it in kind of our normal slot. What you guys been playing lately?
Oh, yeah.
I recently finished we got up to the end of Black Star's Rise. Is that the
That's the last one we have.
Yeah, okay. Just making sure I've got the names right. For some reason I'm having trouble remembering the names of these ones more so than Dunwich, but maybe I'm just more familiar with Dunwich. Anyways, Spoon in our Discord and BD Flory, we play somewhat regularly on Tabletop or Octagon. And we decided to play a campaign on hard with the ultimatum of finality. So if you go down if you get a trauma, you're dead.
If you're defeated.
Yeah, if you're defeated, you're dead. So our list currently is William Yorick, Roland, Mark, Rex, Zoe, Skids, Daisy, and Wendy have all died. Now, I will say that Wendy made it. She recently perished in Black Star's Rise. She was from the beginning. Brian played her through the entire way. Yeah, there was a few, I remember, scenarios where we're just like, we were in the sanatorium or whatever, and I think it was Mark and Rex. We're just basically like, run, little orphan girl, we'll take care of all of this. She gets out, they die or go insane or whatever. Oh, so that was fun.
Yeah, some of the ultimatums are pretty interesting. That's not one I've tried myself, but
it's a campaign we went into basically like, this is gonna suck, let's do it. And it was very interesting because you'd be going into scenarios, like there was many scenarios where someone built a deck and about 3/4 through the scenario they died and they started building another deck for the game we were going to play right after this one with 0 XP, because you're like, all right, who's next on the list? I get to take this person. You're like building the deck. You're like, oh, you guys are done? Okay, I'll just load my deck into the game.
Our list of allies grows thin.
Yeah. So all our guardians are dead. All our guardians were dead going into Black Star's Rise. So
Wow.
Yeah. Skids tried to be the guardian. It didn't work. He's dead too.
So I recently started up a campaign of Skids and Daisy just to see what the hell everyone was talking about. It had been a pretty normal campaign until I hit Echoes of the Past. So I was playing this last night, and in Daisy I took... So this Daisy build leans a little bit more purple. I've got like... What's the dude who goes and fetches a tome?
Oh, research librarian.
Research librarian?
Yep.
Yeah. So I actually have two of him in there. I've got David Renfield, and I've got Calling in Favors to switch them back and forth and draw shit. It's a really cool build. It's not really probably the strongest Daisy build out there, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. And then kind of more combat-focused, sleight of hand, double typewriter Skids right now. So anyway, Daisy took the untranslated tome? What's the untranslated one called?
Glyphs?
Glyphs.
Yeah.
So fun part about that is that the untranslated glyphs, that is a tome.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, once you translate it, it becomes a spell and loses tome, so it loses a little bit that way. But anyway, so I took that. I took one copy of each of the translated versions just to kind of try them both out. In Echoes of the Past, I got out the one that lets you grab extra clues, Guiding Stones. And this is a higher education Daisy build.
Oh my.
With David Renfield.
Oh my.
In Echoes of the Past, where Skids was basically just running around the board managing the enemies. So I was able to keep David Renfield on 2 Doom for a solid 8 turns. So Daisy's just raking in the money. The tainted... God, I can't remember the names of things. Say the Oath Speaker, the corrupted. What adjective is on that card? Anyway, the Oath Speaker shows up. Yeah, I know.
The bad guy.
You guys are so helpful right now. The bad guy shows up in the lobby. Skids goes down with double vicious blow, a sleight of hand typewriter, and 6 actions because I've got Leo out.
Jeez.
Leo out, I had a quick thinking in my hand, and then I used Skid's ability. So he just is poised to unload on the Oath Speaker. God damn it, why can't I think? Corrupted? Blighted?
Possessed.
It's gonna hit me. Possessed! Thank you. There it is. Whew. We got there. Alright, so anyway, so he's just ready to go. So I'm like, oh god, I don't want to draw this fight out. But Daisy just got into the hidden library, so there's 6 clues on that damn thing. So I'm looking at the glyph, I'm going, oh god, there's no limit on this. And I have higher ed on with 10 resources. So I pop a charge of the Guiding Stones, dump everything I can into that test. Daisy swipes 6 clues off that location in one go. I think she was at something like 23 intellect. Gets all the clues, and then Skids goes in and just melts the Oath Speaker with the typewriter and ends the thing. So I ended up getting the victory points from the location and from the enemy. So that, nice. I think, was probably the most epic close to that scenario I've ever had, and that was my first whoa, Skids Daisy. All right, here we go.
Nice.
I really want to take the... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Ian.
You go ahead, Scott.
Okay, I was going to say, I just want to really quickly. One day I want to set it up where I have tons of money as Rex, and I have the Guiding Stones, and I'm playing Blood on the Altar, and I go into the room with Silas, and just in one single action, just with higher ed, just have tons of money and go in with 34 intellect, and just
yep,
with double level 2 deductions and everything, and just 4-player every clue done.
Then here comes the tentacle.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
God, on both of those turns, because both of them were just they were so tight. I had just enough actions and resources to do what I needed to do. I was like, oh god, if it's gonna come up, it's coming up here. And I had just cleared the Necronomicon from Daisy, so I'm like, all right, if I get the Elder Sign, it's not gonna kill me. Oh god. It's definitely the highlight of the campaign thus far. 6 clues in one go is my personal best as a Seeker.
Echoes has always been the easiest scenario for me solo, but lately I've had some crazy runs. I was playing solo Marie, and I drew... I'm blanking on the card names now, but I drew 2 back-to-back of the ones that just turn clues into Doom on the location and keep piling up Doom, and they have to be placed at separate locations, and they're aloof. And then after that, I drew an acolyte, which has to be placed in another location. And then after I killed off some of them, then I drew another of the Doom Gathering ones. So that did not
Seeker
go
of
well.
Carcosa is the one you're thinking of.
I'm like, did I shuffle this thing? It was insane. And then like a mysterious chanting to add more Doom. So that was
same.
one of the worst.
I want to say like my first 6 encounter card draws were either occultist or mysterious chanting.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, can I get clues, please? It took me, like, I lost the first agenda because I had 1 Doom on David Renfield, and then cultist just happened. I'm like, oh, right, I guess I'm losing this agenda. And then it took me like a full 4 turns to finally stabilize, because, you know, Skids is good, but he's not a terribly strong fighter before he gets his stuff down.
Yeah.
So it took me a little while to get to the point where I could actually do it. Plus, it freaking 3 cultists spawn and or move into the damn location where each enemy gets +1 fight and +1 evade, making it even more annoying.
Yeah. That one's it's usually an easy scenario, but it can throw up some combinations that make it impossible or very hard to win. Sometimes even in solo, which I encountered. My latest play has been solo min, which it does include assets. Sorry, Nick.
It's a good deck. Sorry.
One of the things I like about this game is the way in which maybe better players than I are good with just every investigator, but I feel like most of us have investigators that fit more in our playstyle than others. And for me, I often see people like saying they have success with solo Daisy and solo Rex, and the solo Seekers just never click with me for some reason. But Min, oh man, she has just been killing it solo, I think because of her ability. Just lets you, like a Swiss Army knife, to get out of most situations. So yeah, she got up through Black Star's Rise, and I have like the deck is on like 29 XP spent so far. Yeah, it's been a pretty great run. It's nothing special. It's just a pretty standard. Like she's using baseball bat and Milan Christopher. The only interesting thing I did, I think, was adding in. I upgraded to the level. What level is it? Level 3 quiche. So that I can refill the strange solution. So she's just
key, man.
Dissolving people left and right.
Yeah.
Probably the best moment was I was engaged with 2 lunatics. She dissolves them both, and then there's 2 more in the next location. So on the next turn, she throws down a hiding spot and just skips past them. So solo min is a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, man. Seekers do acid.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, level 3 quiche with acidic ichor, like, it's incredibly strong.
Yeah.
And I know we were kind of talking about the glyphs too, Sean. That evading glyph is unbelievable. Like, it's action compression and enemy management just crammed into one. Because you're like, oh, I'll just investigate, not take an attack of opportunity, get the clue, evade that enemy, and then walk away. Like it just...
Yeah, when I first read that, it didn't process to me that the investigate action is a normal investigate action, and you still get the clue off of it.
Yeah.
And, like, if Rex is doing it, you could potentially get the extra clue off of it too. Like,
yeah.
I have one of each. I have yet to draw that one in this campaign, but that was actually when I looked at both of them. I figured that was going to be the one that was actually overall more useful to me.
And I find it useful in both multiplayer and solo. Like solo because it deals with an enemy, and then multiplayer. You're like, hey, can you deal with this after I investigate? They're like, yeah, sure. Then you just like investigate, walk away, or stay there. Then, you know, Murph comes in and, or no,
oh
Mark.
My god, it's not even non-elite. That's amazing.
Yeah, man, it's insanely good. Like I would put it above acidic ichor, quite honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
A bold statement.
Bold, but true. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move it on. Scott, I know we actually have some really cool rules stuff this week.
Oh boy. Okay, there's a few. Shortcut level 2. I should probably bring up this card and read it because
it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that it's an upgrade that does something very different from the original, right? Like the original is just action move them, where Shortcut 2 you actually have to put it down on a location, it has to stay there, right? Like it's, I mean,
and at the end of the day though, it does the same thing and more. I think the only thing you lose on level 2 Shortcut is the 0 cost, right?
Yeah, and I mean, like, if you have a central location, like, let's say museum or Blood on the Altar or Midnight Masks, like, all great places to put a shortcut. So,
if it gets used twice in a scenario, I feel like it's better than level 0.
Well, by the action economy with the reason...
Don't...
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No, but totally, because then you also don't have to be there, right?
Right.
Yeah, so I totally agree. Anyways, so...
And you can pop the move in any free action window. It's not just during your turn.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's...
Yeah. Zero ambivalence for me. I think level 2 is just straight up better. But let's get there.
Yeah, anyways.
What rules craziness do we have?
Okay, so... Fast, play only during your turn, attached to a location. Attached location gains, lightning bolt, exhaust shortcut, move to a connecting location. Seems straightforward. Mm-hmm. The problem is, after shortcut, there is a colon. Anything before the colon is a cost. You cannot pay costs with other people's cards. So if I play shortcut down on a location, and you, Sean, come across this location, you go to trigger the fast action, you go to exhaust shortcut, it's not your card, you can't.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe I need to take it back a little bit. I totally thought other investigators can use this.
So, it comes from the corrosion ruling. Basically, you can't use other people's cards to pay your costs. Because people, when corrosion, the treachery came out, people said, oh, could I discard my friend's stuff to satisfy corrosion? So anyways, someone contacted Matt about this. Matt basically said, yeah, whoops.
That can't be the intent.
The intent.
Yeah, I was about to say.
The intent is that anyone can use it. So he said he is going to FAQ it.
Good.
And I believe he kind of mentioned...
retracted.
He mentioned, like, play it as intended. Like, the way it's written is not right, but he's going to fix it so that it plays as intended. So, yeah.
But isn't it also a rule that a card that's attached to a location can be activated by any investigator, or is that just encounter cards?
Only if it's an encounter card.
Okay.
Yeah, because encounter cards, even in your own threat area, you can, like, that's how someone can help you with, like, chronophobia. They can come by and pat you on the back, because that is an encounter deck, a counter card in your threat area, which is at the location.
Okay.
All
right, well, that's good to know that it's been clarified as intended and not as written.
The second one, Norman, you can see the top card of his deck. Everyone understands how that works. You do not see the top card of his deck until setup is complete. So while you're mulliganing, you do not see the top card of your deck. While locations are being flipped over and everything, it's when the game starts. So...
Good to know.
Okay.
Slight clarification. Because, I mean, if you're like, you take up your first 5 and you look over and you could see the top card, that could influence your mulligan decision.
It often does.
Yeah, it probably would, right?
I'm pretty sure I've been playing that wrong the whole time, because that's how I play it with Gandalf in Lord of the Rings, too.
Yeah, which I think in Gandalf actually does work that way, but...
Gandalf might be different. Yeah. So, anyways, for Norman, there's that. And then we had a card called Time Warp, that some other podcast or, liberal magazine, something like that.
I've heard they eat babies.
Yeah, so they had no imagination. They didn't come up with a name for their podcast that wasn't a card. So love you guys.
Okay, hang on. We're straying dangerously close into actual dissing here.
Yeah. No, I listen to all their podcasts. They're good. So they previewed a card called Time Warp. I'm sure most people have heard it, but super quickly. Mystic event. It's a spell, a paradox. 1 cost, 1 XP. Fast. Play immediately after investigator at your location finishes resolving an action during his or her turn. Undo that action, and then in brackets, return the game state to exactly the way it was before the action was performed, including the action's cost. So, crazy card.
I love it so much.
The cojones on Matt to print a card like this so early in the game. That could just cripple some design in the future.
And you know what? I love that about Matt. That's why he's one of my favorite designers working right now. Like, in a co-op game,
agreed,
I'm super okay with taking a chance like this and giving us something that's crazy and fun, but also crazy.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Sean. We've talked about how, like, old CCGs would have these crazy cards, and that just doesn't happen anymore because I think current designers are more like, let's just make the clean mechanics that work. But for me, I'm kind of a rule of cool guy. It's a cool card. It's fun. Like, it doesn't bother me that much that there's going to be some weird rule stuff along the way. I'd rather have cool things than not cool things.
But I feel like we should keep like a community counter of how many weird rules questions this brings up.
Yes.
It's a lot.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, man, the wildness of CCG cards. Sorry, just not as an off thing. There's a red card in Magic, a possibility storm. Basically, whenever you play a card, you don't actually play that card. You reveal cards off the top of your deck until you find a card with the same type, and then you cast that one instead. And that's for both players. So like, it's insane. Anyways, back to
God.
yeah. I just want to bring that up because CCGs can get really weird.
Yes.
So time warp. You rewind the entire action, and you need to get it to exactly what it was before. There was a big question with Quantum Flux, where you have to shuffle if you ever want to reverse a Quantum Flux. So someone does Quantum Flux, shuffle all their cards into their deck, they draw a card, it's a weakness. And they're like, oh, can you time warp this? You can, if you can remember the order of their discard pile. If you cannot return a game state to exactly the way it was, the action fails and time warp fails, essentially. So that's the big thing. If you
Love it.
If you attempt to time warp and you can't, that sucks. Now, a randomized deck, so let's say there's only 5 cards in their discard pile, and you can remember them and they're in alphabetical order, so you know the order or whatever. And they Quantum Flux and they want to reverse it. The cards that were in their deck that got shuffled, because it's a randomized deck, you have to return it to a random state. You don't have to know the order of random cards because you wouldn't know them otherwise. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you
know, but I accept
okay,
it.
so you take the time warp cards out that you Quantum Fluxed in, you put them back in the discard, and then you shuffle the deck. Because you'd have no way of knowing the order of that deck that's face down.
Right.
So
it's an unknown state of being.
Right, so you put it into an unknown state. Now, if you had scryed the top 3 cards, you find the 3 cards you have scryed, you put them on top and shuffle the rest. Does that make sense?
Interesting.
Yeah. Basically, you put it back as best you can. Anything that was random, you put it back as random.
God, so this is essentially a scrying card.
I feel like if you're trying to time warp a Quantum Flux, then that should just open up a black hole and just consume all of reality.
Okay, moving on from that, I'll do one other quick thing on time warp. After an action ends and the investigator gets defeated, could you play time warp to bring them back? The answer is no, because time warp says choose an investigator at your location. They're no longer at your location because they're defeated. So you can't bring people back from the dead with time warp.
Yeah. It's a fixed point in time. Oh, my Doctor Who
fans.
I like it.
There's like Harry...
Isn't
there something about Harry Potter bringing people back from the dead or something?
Yeah, there are no spells for it. I was going more for Aladdin. That was like one of the genie's rules.
Oh, yeah.
You also can't make investigators fall in love, and you can't wish for more investigators.
Oh, yeah.
That's fair.
Thanks for following me there, guys.
That's two of the things I wish for most often.
More people to fall in love with? I'm really confused.
Never mind.
That was a path.
We need to time warp that whole joke. Return it to its previous state.
All right, is that it for rules?
Yeah, I'll leave it there. I seem to have confused you guys enough with time warp, but it's a weird card. Yeah, I don't know what to say.
It seems fun. I'm excited to play around with it. And level 1 means basically anyone who can take Mystic cards of any significant level can take it. So
yeah,
and your Safinas, your Daisies.
And I think the large majority of actions that are going to be rewinded because of it, it's going to be super simple, right?
Yeah.
You missed an attack on a retaliate enemy. Okay, try it
Yep.
again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
You're 3 horror and you pull rotting remains or a tentacle on a rotting remains.
yeah.
Whoops. Oh wait, hang on. If you're defeated, it doesn't work. Never mind.
Oh yeah. There you go. It would put you
Oh.
1 horror away from death.
There you go.
Made you discard your Saint Hubert's key or whatever.
God, I love that card.
That's the card so good. You would, you
Okay.
dirty Agnes player.
Oh god. See, I actually haven't even played it in Agnes yet. Jim loves it, and I currently have it in the Daisy build that I'm running because she's a little bit more spell heavy. I'm running level 1 Book of Shadows in that deck too, guys. It's a weird deck. It's real fun.
Nice.
Oh hey, quick thing in the chat. Dan said you could time warp back friendly fire. If Roland blows Wendy's head off with a shotgun, you can time warp back Roland, which saves Wendy. Yeah.
I mean,
There you
you
go.
could, but do you really want to?
Basically,
Yeah, let's not give reckless shotgun wielders any more license.
yeah, Nick. It's like an episode of Looper or the movie Looper. I'm back in time. Oh god.
Is that the one with Bruce Willis?
I think so. And
Yep.
Shia
JGL.
LaBeouf. I think.
Shia LaBeouf? Okay, never mind. I'm thinking of a different
Maybe
one.
not. I'm not really sure.
I thought it was. Oh God, it's been.
Who's
a
the
while
guy
since I
from
thought it was
Transformers?
Gordon Levitt.
Oh,
Yeah,
Jason
JGL.
Gordon Levitt. Yeah.
yeah, him.
All right.
Anyways,
I'm glad we settled that.
main Tupac.
So, guys, let's talk a little bit about how we warp the game. I see what I did there to make it our own. So, I guess just kind of busting into this. Where and how you play, I think, is probably one of the first things to talk about, because I think per the rules and kind of per the original convention of these kinds of card games is you either are playing one investigator by yourself or you're getting together with other players and each of them is playing one investigator. How often does that actually happen for either of you guys? What percent of your play would you say falls into just kind of that strict convention?
Um,
You're either playing true solo with physical cards or you're playing, actual in-person multiplayer.
oh, 10 to 15%.
Yeah, I think that's probably where I'm at, maybe even lower.
I've even gotten to the point where sometimes I'm like, I don't want to take out my card. As much as I love the tactileness of the cards and pimping out my game, sometimes I'm like, I could just transfer the deck onto Octagon and then play solo at home on my computer.
I'd say my percentage is pretty high, like 60%, just because I play more true solo than two-handed, and I play more physical than Octagon. In general, it depends though, because Octagon is really good for that. That's probably my second most play option is Octagon when I'm just wanting to quickly test out a deck, or yeah, like you said, Scott, I just don't feel like walking over to the table and pulling out cards.
Okay, so then obviously we mentioned already the way you can defy that convention is by playing on Octagon or Tabletop Simulator.
Mm-hmm.
How what's your guys' ratio of physical play to virtual?
Wasn't that the first question? Because that's what I answered.
Yeah. More
Okay.
or less, I suppose it is about the same question.
I'd say about 80 to 85% of my game is digital.
Do either of you guys play two-handed on a regular basis, or am I the only guy who's really hard on that?
Yeah, I'd say I generally have a few campaigns going on. I'd say like 2/3 are usually solo, and then a solid 1/3 are like two-handed campaigns.
I have played a single campaign two-handed.
Oh, interesting.
I
And then beyond that, you're either multiplayer or solo?
I love solo, man. I think there's just a magic in it that you can't get with two-handed or multiplayer.
Interesting. Yeah, see, because the reason I love two-handed so much, I know we've already kind of covered this ground on like our new player episode, but I love to try all the new things, or as many new things as I can, and since time is finite, I find that playing 2 decks at a time just helps me try more new things. And then there are just straight up mechanics that don't work if there aren't other investigators on the board, especially if you like Guardian.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
So-
and so when I do get to play multiplayer with people, I mean, I do play a lot of multiplayer online, but also playing with other people at game nights or whatever. I intentionally build decks that do multiplayer things, so I get to experience, stand together and all these other multiplayer feelings, if you will. So.
And then, Ian, I suppose this is probably a great time to bust in a little bit harder. We touched lightly on it last episode, but remote tabling, or we've been trying to come up with an acronym for it. So I've got my best one in the show notes here. So remote assisted play tabling user reactive experience, or Rapture.
Nice.
I think this game does really well with it. So basically what I've done when I do this. Are you impressed or nonplussed with that one, Scott?
I am. You know what? It's family friendly, so I'm going to go with that. That's good.
Yeah, we had a couple that we dare not utter actually on the podcast.
Yep.
So yeah. Anyway, so what I've generally done is we've set up, and Scott, you and Nick and I did this one time too, a ways back. We started I think a Dunwich campaign way back in the day.
Yes.
But basically, each player sets up the scenario on their table. And basically all you need for your partners is their mini token. I also set out their investigator card just on the table so I can put clues and damage and horror on it. Because really, unlike a game like Lord of the Rings where you kind of have to have full knowledge of your your partner's board state to truly play, this game doesn't really require that. Yeah. You can ask questions pretty easily, like, hey, what's that? You can just put an enemy that's engaged with another player by their investigator card. Keeping damage and horror and clues on there is nice, but it's not necessary. If they've got Doom on a card, I generally just put that Doom straight on their investigator card. So so basically everyone sets up the scenario. One person actually runs the randomized encounter deck and tells everyone else what they draw. And honestly, it's become way better for me personally to play than Octagon or Tabletop. Though I do like those virtual implementations. This one's just more fun for me.
Yeah. I like it because, like I said, the tactileness of card games is part of the experience to me, right? And that's the reason I get like metal resource coins and other things that why would a normal person need these things? But you get to play with your bits. And and like even for House Always Wins, for an example, when you go into a back hallway, you say, okay, I'm going into a back hallway. Nick, which one do I go to? And he just picks one, like from the random stack of 3. And he says this one, and then I go find that one and put it down. When he draws an encounter card, I flip through my encounter cards and I draw it and I put it somewhere, especially if it's an enemy or whatever. So it's surprisingly easy to play.
Smooth.
Yeah. Incredibly
I've yet
smooth.
to run into a situation where we can't just share the information and someone just goes and grabs the card from their stack.
Yeah.
Like
the learning curve is less than one game.
Yes.
It takes, I think, 2 rounds to learn how it works.
What you need to communicate, basically, is all it is.
It was, super easy to get into and use, and obviously Octagon and Tabletop Simulator have their uses, but for that kind of multiplayer virtual experience, I like it. This way of doing it like 1,000% more, just because of, like you said, Scott, being able to use the physical bits, and I don't know, it's just like it feels like a much different experience. I think. Just
and there's sometimes. Yeah, there's like sometimes on Octagon or Tabletop, and I forget like the key, and I'm like, oh, how do I put a Doom on this or a resource? And I'm jamming away at the F keys, and not the actual F key, although sometimes. Whereas like in real life, I'm just like, okay, left hand, move over, grab token,
you can do it.
Place on card.
That would be awesome if that was the thought that actually went through your head.
I know all the hotkeys for moving my own limbs. Like it's great.
Respirate in, respirate out.
Yeah.
The one tricky recall is the hidden cards, but it's not. I mean, I've found hidden cards in general doesn't make a huge deal whether you know what they have or not. But I saw one suggestion, if you do care about that, that you could just put like some proxy cards in your deck, replace the hidden cards with that just say like hidden on them. It could just be a sheet of paper and a card or whatever, and then each person has the kind of deck of hidden cards, and then they can just draw one or something. I guess you would have to figure out who has who so you can keep track of the copies, but
yeah, I mean, if you're playing like more than 2 players, you could just secretly communicate to whoever's running the actual encounter deck which one you have. And honestly, like I know the hidden cards are supposed to be hidden, and they're kind of supposed to, but I haven't found that they actually affect table talk and that sort of thing as much as I expected they would. So I don't think that's going to break anything.
Yeah,
I don't think so.
And I mean, if someone plans to do something and then all of a sudden they don't do that, you can figure out which hidden card they have pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, why don't you move 2 spaces over here? No, I'm going to stay at this end of the train. Like, you know,
I'm good.
Yeah. But it's going to fall
Hey, I
off.
thought you had shortcut. No, I don't like events anymore. Sorry, bro.
Yeah. So can you help me with that vicious blow? No, I'm going to save it for rats. Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of then, let's actually talk about how we actually possibly bend the rules as written during our actual play. So, what do you guys ignore table talk or do you actually try to abide by it at all? I straight up ignore it.
Oh, I didn't even know they made that rule for this game. Or if I did, I read it and promptly ignored it. As the rules guy, sorry.
I, for a long time, have been vocal about not being a fan of it in Lord of the Rings, and I'm not a fan of it here. I mean, the one part of table talk I abide by is it's not like I'm just every turn reading out like, oh, here's the cards in my hand, because I don't think anyone on Earth does that. But I'm not gonna be coy about it and just because it's the same issue in Lord of the Rings where you'd be like, I have a certain wizard in my hand.
I love how that's everyone's example.
Yeah, and it's like
it's so true.
And it's the same thing here. Like, oh, don't worry about it. I can stop the attack. It's like, okay, you have dodge. You know, like I don't see a huge benefit to it, to the mental gymnastics you go through.
So I see the benefit from their standpoint, or the designer's standpoint, that you make this rule and what it stops is quarterbacking the entire table, right? Where you have one experienced player telling 3 inexperienced players how to play. Yeah. But if you as a group are okay with, and I think we play with like-minded people too, and honestly with this game,
right,
I think it's more fun. Like if I'm experienced, the other person isn't experienced. Like my wife, she plays one campaign once and then she's done with this game just because of time or whatever, and she enjoys it. But she's always lead investigator, and she's like, "What should I do?" I'm like, "I don't know. Do what you want." Like it's more fun to watch them walk into like a hallway of fire or whatever, right? Like and be like,
100%.
Yeah, I experienced that once too. You know, you'll learn, young Padawan. So watching. So in Lord of the Rings, I think it was there to stop people from being like, okay, you defend with this guy with Sentinel, you attack with this guy with range, and you plan the whole table.
Right.
This game, I think you don't need to, because so much joy comes from seeing people who don't know what's going on mess up.
Yeah, it's part of that role-playing aspect that people like feel more they're embodying this investigator and they want to choose the actions for their investigator, and it feels more out of place for someone to be like, okay, now Skids, you're going to move here and do this and that. Like, it just, I don't know. I've never seen that happen. Not that I play a ton of multiplayer in person, but.
Yeah. And I mean, there is. Oh, sorry. Ed.
Yeah, I can see the argument for adhering to the table talk rules. Like, if someone really wants to go hard in on the role-playing aspect, and I feel like then you limit table talk to investigators or players who are in the same room, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Just to kind of respect the geography of the world.
And the thing for me is, I think that's cool. Like, I would even want to experiment playing with like super like more RP heavy, but it's to me that's more of a house rule than a like all the time rule. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's not the default. That should be a special thing that you do. And the one aspect that's kind of, I think, does add something to the game already has a keyword for it, which is peril. Like that, I mean, that's just part of the rules, and that is really cool. Like not being able to talk or share that knowledge, but like I said, that's a keyword already, so it's built into the rules.
That satisfies that satisfies the table talk rule for me. Is peril
yes,
like
exactly.
Oh shoot, I didn't ask everyone what was in their hand, and I have to choose assets, events, or skills.
Yes. That to me is the best peril card that's been implemented.
Absolutely.
No, I love peril because everyone will be drawing a card off the encounter deck, and you'll see the person draw and then slowly pull the card toward their face.
Yeah.
Fucking everyone does that with the peril card. Or they cover the back of it because then no one can see it.
Peril, pull this card to your face and read it.
So I think another big thing that I am a huge proponent of is being a little loose on takesy backsies. So playing kind of a little bit more quickly and honoring a takesy backsy when it makes sense versus taking these long deliberate looks at the game board and studying what's in your hand and being like, okay, if I do this in this order and blah 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 blah, and really slowing down the game. I much prefer to be halfway into a turn and be like, oh, well, if I had thought about it, I would have done this action first, and that would have made more sense. Like, I don't have a problem with people backing those up as long as it was a legal move at the time, if they had just been thinking a little bit longer about it. Do you guys do similar things?
For me, I kind of think of it in terms of like there's a actual rule in Star Trek Frontiers about this, and that's based on Mage Knight. I haven't played Mage Knight, so it probably has something similar. But it even says a similar thing in the rule book, like just let people play their turns out, and then if they need to take back, they can. The only exception is like if something hidden is revealed, like you reveal a new tile in that game. And I kind of have a similar approach in this game. I think like just let people go because it does save on count like these long analysis paralysis turns, and they can take it back as long as it's not like, oh, we'll talk about that too, but let me just take this tentacle back, like that's a little far for me. But or I drew this card, it's a weakness, oh, let me take that back, I didn't mean to draw that. But if it's like if they're going through and it's like, oh, that was a stupid to move there and do this, let me back that up then.
And like Mage Knight I think taught me that rule, because same exact rule, basically you can undo your turn but once you reveal hidden information, so that's a chaos bag draw, that's a coming off the encounter deck, drawing a card like a Draw to the Flame or whatever, or walking into a location that's hidden. Now I will say, if I know what that location is for sure, like walking into the graveyard at Midnight Masks, like I know what that is, so I will let people take that back.
Right.
But whenever it's actually unknown, like one of the two randomized locations for a different location, as soon as that happens, that locks that turn up to that point.
I also feel, and a place where I'm also forgiving on that, I think, for myself or others, is if it's something they just boneheaded clearly forgot, or boneheaded I clearly forgot, which we know I'm not trying to fudge it and say, well, actually I would have done this, but it's like, oh, like I forgot to trigger this thing, like obviously anyone in the right mind would have triggered it. Like to me, that's a valid place that, that should have been. Or someone saying, that's good for take back.
Hey, I'm gonna,
like, I forgot my lone wolf 2 turns in a row, and I was definitely alone when I started my turn.
Or like someone who's like, hey, I'm gonna head over to this location with Daisy, and I'm gonna use both my deductions on that location. I was like, oh yeah, sounds good. They go over and they draw the encounter token, and they fail. Like, my 2 deductions are still in my hand. I'm like, yeah, but you said you were putting them in, right? Like you were trying to speed up so fast, you literally forgot the action, physical action, but the mental action was there, and everyone heard you say it. I'll let them like just basically chuck them in. But that being said, if they fail even with those deductions, I still make them discard them, right? Like you said you were going to do that. It cuts both ways. So,
and I think that's definitely where the line is. I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, you can you can go ahead and use this kind of rules bending to cheat if you feel like it. But I wouldn't encourage that. This is more to encourage the board to keep fluid turns going.
Yes.
And encourage that sort of play versus, the dude who's going to sit there for 5 minutes and study the board before he takes his turn. So how far do you guys let someone back up then? I mean, I guess we kind of already covered it. Like a full turn?
To the beginning of their turn. Or the beginning of the phase.
I've had like reactions that I forgot to do 2 turns ago that occasionally I'll let slide because, Pete Sylvester, I forgot to heal the horror off for the last 2 turns and now he's clear or something like that.
Yeah, him I'll kind of let... That one I let slide quite longly, I guess. When the next time you go to put a horror on, you're like, there's already a horror there. When did you last get a horror? Oh, that should be well gone. I'm like, oh yeah, that's gone.
Or I find another one that happens pretty commonly with me when I'm playing multiplayer is someone will be halfway into their turn and hit something where we're like, oh, well, shit, we talked about this and this other person meant to go first. Like, let's pretend I went first. Pause your turn. I came in here. I did this stuff. Resume. Like, if we had just talked it out.
Yeah.
If we had taken the 2 minutes to talk it out, we would have gotten there. But taking that 2 minutes on a regular basis is just so boring and onerous to do. So let's pretend I went first is something I say a lot.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, it depends how. Oh man, I don't know. Like if the person goes in,
I'm not talking like egregious things where it's more like, hey, I meant to go in here and get the clue off before you went in and activated the action ability or something like that.
Yeah, like. Oh, sorry, my toddler's waddling in. Yeah, so if someone goes in, like if someone fast plays, goes in and like swings at a guy with retaliate and draws a tentacle, I would say
that's different.
I would say no, we can't pretend someone went first. Like you,
yeah, that's different.
You took the hand of fate there.
So I guess everyone has to figure out where their own line is, but yeah, I would agree with you there. That's like as soon as the board state changes to the point where it could not have gone differently, had we just talked about it. If that, I don't know, I suppose that doesn't make sense as a sentence, but you know what I mean. There's a line where that's basically, using time warp for free, as opposed to just changing the order of things that still, result in a similar board state.
Yeah, I think the thing is, there's just never going to be a hard and fast rule for that. It's something you have to work out for yourself and the people you're playing with, and I guess the guiding principle. I mean, like you said, Sean, if someone just wants to straight up just their way of having fun is just by taking back chaos tokens and what is essentially cheating, like that's fine. Like I'm not going to judge anyone for that. But otherwise, yeah, I think the guiding principle is just like, are you doing this backup because you're truly kind of compensating for a boneheaded brain fart or something that you fully intended to do and you just didn't, things that you would have done differently if except for memory or speed's sake, or are you backing up because you're like trying to get a real advantage against the encounter deck and that's the only reason why you're backing up?
So that being said, on the other side of that coin, how do you guys deal with straight up mistakes? Like forgetting that, when I was attacking this enemy last turn, he technically had +2 fight, or this guy can't be evaded and we did it, or anything along those lines. If you catch it after the fact, how do you?
I shouldn't have put that damage with machete because that's a common one. I've had a lot of years of experience with this because of Lord of the Rings, where mistakes happen often and you have to deal with it. I guess it's just a matter of like, can it easily be rectified? And if it can, then fix it. And if it can't, it's like, oh, I forgot to do this thing like 2 turns ago and that affected everything that came after. Like there's no way to really rewind, and I don't think any desire on anyone to rewind that far back. So yeah, it's just generally a matter of, is there an easy fix for it? Can you kind of go back and recreate what would have happened?
Yeah, I'd say that sounds about right for where I sit. I tend to be kind of forgiving for this sort of thing. Like, if it's 2 turns ago and there's no way anyone remembers what would have happened had we played it right, like a lot of times I'll let crap like that go.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes if someone's fighting a monster and it has +2 fight, and we forgot about that and they killed it and we're in the Mythos phase, and then we look at the agenda, it's like, oh shoot, did we count the +2 fight in that? And like, oh no, we didn't, and I would have failed if we did. Then I say, okay, so we forgot about the +2 fight altogether. Monster comes back out, redo the skill check, you can commit what you want now with the proper knowledge of that fight that you're about to make. So if the person has an overpower or a vicious blow or something, like they can, okay, with an actual fight value, I'm redoing this test correctly. So
yeah, there are times like that where I can't rewind everything that was done, but I will do like a mini redo of that particular test that I messed up the rules on or whatever, and just say, okay, now that I remember the actual rules, I'll take that test again, knowing what should have been, and kind of go from there.
Mm-hmm.
So moving it on to kind of what was the kernel of this discussion topic, at least for me, was handling campaigns, handling experience, handling multiple campaigns going at once. along with the Arkham release schedule? I know we talked last time about how most of us are kind of meh on the campaigns being this drip feed over 6 months.
I strongly disagree.
However long. Oh, all right. Well, maybe we should have that discussion first. But regardless of where you sit on that argument, we do have the complication where those of us who play this game a lot are in a situation where we have to disassemble and reassemble decks constantly, and there are new cards that come out, and the rules as written, unless you're a rogue, don't really allow you to be like, oh, well, I want to try my Ashcan campaign with this new set of cards that I think would go really well with him because I started that campaign with a different build. So first, do you guys find yourselves strictly adhering to the deck building rules and reassembling your decks as you go throughout the campaign?
I have very strict rules for myself on this, where if I have characters in a campaign and when a new pack comes out and I open it and I'm sleeving it up, if there is like a 1-for-1 trade of level 0 cards that I want to make right then before knowing anything about the scenario for those decks, I will put it in. But like 2 weeks later, I will not allow myself to do that. So basically, like the brand new cards in my blind run scenario, I will allow myself to make a couple switches.
Interesting.
For me, I actually 100% stick to the deck building rules, and I don't allow any switching. Which is it's funny that I'm the rogue aficionado, but I tend to be a very kind of stick to the rules.
That actually makes all kinds of sense because you have the innate ability to switch it.
I just have adaptable all the time, guys, so I'm not breaking the rules.
Sure. But in general, just in games in general, I tend to be a very stick to the rules, no house rules type of person. So I think that's potentially my own hang up that I'm like, but I can't break the rules on this. So even though it would probably lead to more fun.
Everyone draws their own line.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, that, like, when I say switching a few cards, I mean, like, 1 or 2 at most. Like, it's very rare. I'm like, oh, this card and this card and this card. It's like a copy of a card, both level 0,
sure.
swap just to try it out.
But, sorry, Sean.
No,
you may speak.
That's fine. Yeah, so I guess I'm the dirty rotten cheater here. As I mentioned earlier, like part of the joy of this game for me is trying out all the new different things. And when I open a new pack of cards, quite often I'll be like, oh, that would go well in X deck. And most of the time I have a campaign in progress with that character. So basically, when I start a campaign and I make the build, I write like a little description as part of the deck title that reminds me kind of what the point of it was. Like this one that I have currently is, Daisy spell tomes and Skid's sleight of hand guns. Like it just kind of to remind myself what kind of the basic idea was. But beyond that, like I'll play through 2 or 3 scenarios in a campaign with a given set of investigators, completely disassemble the decks and not keep track of I keep track of XP and I keep track of weaknesses and trauma, obviously, but I don't keep track of individual cards in the deck because when I eventually come back to that campaign, normally I go like 2 or 3 packs before I revisit a set of investigators, so that way when I go through the trouble of reassembling everything, I actually get to play through a few different scenarios before disassembling. I don't make the same deck. I adhere to the same number of XP, but most of the time I want to try some new shit. And I fully acknowledge that that's cheating, but at the same time, I kind of don't care. It lets me try new things, and I'm not playing for the achievement points. I'm not playing on hard or expert, so I feel like it doesn't really matter if I'm fudging it in standard.
And I think that's completely acceptable. Like as long as you realize you're worth nothing now. And your opinions are invalid, and yeah,
valid.
Yep.
It's a thing. It's a real thing. And this is kind of what I struggle with the release schedule, because if we got the player cards kind of in big chunks, like if for instance, if we went with the thing where the campaign is released in 2 big boxes, we get all the level 0 cards in the first box, and we get all the level up cards in the second box, or however they ended up doing it, that might be a different situation, because then I get all the cards, I get to look at the different options, I decide on what I'm going to do, and then there's not any indecision later down the line when I get this new toy that's like, oh, well, that's the toy that Jim has been waiting for his entire life. I'm subbing it in now.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where I sit on it. I adhere to some rules, but definitely not all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I know Nick has expressed vehement opinions on this next one, but do you guys ever allow yourself to redo a scenario as you're going through a campaign?
Not on my blind run. My blind run is like, you take what you get.
Yeah.
Whereas like all the other ones, like sometimes I'm like, I want to try taking this path, especially through Carcosa. Like I'm basically approaching Dim Carcosa with like 7 campaigns waiting in the wings. And like some of them are doubt, some of them are conviction, like all these different variations. And I'll sometimes replay scenarios because I'm like, I really want to get that ending. But I want to get it truthfully. I don't want to just like, just give myself that ending. So.
Right. Yeah. In general, no, I don't mulligan scenarios. There are a few exceptions. One is the first, and like Scott, my blind run is just no mulligans. It's just the full pain. But the first scenario of a campaign is one that I'll mulligan if... not if it's a close game and I barely lose, but if it's something where the deck is just struggling hardcore, then for me it's like, I'm not going to take this, there's a finite amount of time to play. I don't want to take a deck that sucks through the rest of the campaign. Like, I'm going to tweak the deck and try it again and see if it's better. Because to me, that's like the equivalent of a testing scenario, the first scenario, to see how it will do through the rest. And if it's just not performing well at all at the beginning, then there's no real reason for me to do it. And plus I'm at the beginning of the scenario anyway, so replaying it is like restarting the campaign essentially. So and in those cases I'll redo everything, like what basic weakness I have and etc. But yeah, that's about it. I think I've only done true mulligans of scenarios later on in a campaign a couple times. And that has been where I felt like the encounter deck was just like, there was just no way to win. Like it just chained stuff together in a way that was unfair.
Yeah, I think for my part, as a general rule, I don't mulligan scenarios. In Lord of the Rings, it's just kind of the order of the day because everything's a standalone there. So it was just kind of a different mindset. But I feel like this game has become, it's got the rules to just kind of take it on the chin and keep going, right? So it's not the end of the campaign. You take a trauma, which sucks, but it's not campaign ending for most.
Well,
most
it might
investigators.
be.
Yeah, it might be. But for most investigators, they can continue to truck on, albeit in a little bit of a weakened state. I think the only time I ever mulligan a scenario is when I just get shit dumb luck from both the encounter deck and the chaos bag, and I just don't get to play it. Like. Yeah. Those scenarios where occasionally everything just hits you in the wrong way. You don't draw your good cards. You hit your weaknesses. Like you pull 6 enemies, and you wipe on turn 3. Like I'll accept a loss, but I want to play the game.
Yeah.
So those are the situations where. Oh, God damn it, Alexa, calm down. So anyway, those are the kind of games that I will actually be like, all right. I just I want to actually have a go of it. I'll take a loss like in the second half when shit's coming down, and even then, if luck turns on me then and I've actually made a game of it, I'll take my loss then just fine. But if the game shuts down in like 2-3 turns, I'm not counting that.
Yeah, I think one of the other only things I'd add to this too, for my wife and I's campaign, from Dunwich. We failed at Where Doom Awaits, as I'm sure many people did. I knew what could happen because I'd played it solo, and when she found out, she was kind of like, oh, well, that's kind of lame. And it wasn't, she enjoyed the story aspect of it, but because we have very limited playtime with just her and myself, because we have a kid, right? And so I have shift work so I can play during the day or whatever. But her and I playing Arkham, she was disappointed. She's like, well, I want to play the last scenario, but I don't want to do a whole nother campaign because that'll take us another few months. So we just said, okay, we won, and just moved on. So,
yep.
But just for the story aspect of it.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to qualify that. If you want to continue to play the campaign, you continue to play the campaign.
Yeah. My thing was like, okay, but we can't take any XP from this, and we have to choose the worst outcome. She's like, yeah, okay. So that was our
slave driver. Okay, so then I think kind of just method of play. Do you guys tend to, when a new scenario comes out, just like reassemble every campaign that you've got going and just run up against it 5 times in a row? Or do you, what I do, I'll lead here. So what I do is I generally have like 8+ campaigns going through a campaign once it gets rolling. So I try to, like I mentioned, kind of have 2 or 3 scenarios built up for a campaign before I revisit it. So that way I get back into the deck, the experience, it all makes sense to me what I'm doing with it. And then it also just reduces in setup and takedown time because I've already got that deck assembled as I bust through 2 or 3 scenarios before it all, has to come disassembled again.
I think I do about the same as you. The only issue that prevents this or maybe allows me to play more of them as a chunk is Canadian shipping. And so there was some time during the Carcosa campaign I remember saying, like, guys, like, I haven't even gotten like this pack yet. Like, I was a little over 2 packs behind, and I'm just like waiting for it to come to Canada, to Edmonton or whatever. But for the most part,
that's in Canada, I hear.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. For the most part, I play up to the current scenario, and a lot of it's on digital, or I have like 3 or 4 character decks, but I don't reassemble them like you, Sean. Like, I just have them built, and so I'll set up a scenario and play it 4 times with 4 different decks. But it's all true solo for the most part.
I tend to generally, as I'm going through a campaign, have like 4 or 5 campaigns going, and as each scenario comes out, I'm basically breaking down the decks and reassembling them for each play, which I don't know, I don't find it too bad in this game because the decks are pretty small at 30. So yeah, just by necessity I have to break them down, and so I don't tend to wait to chunks. I want to play the new stuff right away. I don't have any willpower when it comes to that. So yeah, and then once we get to this point in a campaign, this happened with Dunwich as well, when we're like almost at the end, then I'll start some new campaigns from the beginning. Like recently I started Roland and then Skids and then Min, just to have, try out the investigators I didn't try out yet. And since it's so much of the campaign is out already, it's fun to just be able to blitz through those while I still have the other first campaigns in the wings. So our next topic is theming, which Scott's just going to say a hard pass to, I imagine.
Nuh-uh, not always. No.
Not always. Okay, maybe I have you pigeonholed.
Yeah.
Scott plays RPGs and stuff.
I do. They're just not Arkham.
So how much RPing do you do when you play Arkham, Ian? Do you, I mean, I know we kind of, every time we break down a scenario, we kind of go around and say like, oh, these story choices, how much were you role-playing it? I think that tends to be the only time I'm truly thinking like in character, more or less. Like I'm thinking like Roland would probably go to the police and Skids definitely wouldn't, and those sort of things.
Yeah, I find when I'm actually playing a scenario that I'm just caught up in the not completely caught up in the mechanics. I find a lot of Arkham just flavorful, so you're kind of playing out a story as you go. But as far as like actually, I'm taking this evade action because this is what Skids would do. Now it's like, because this is the best thing to do right now, to help me survive. So the RPing, mostly comes in just, I do RP mostly for the story resolutions and like, what would this character pick?
I find it's incredibly fascinating how many of the Gators think exactly like I do when making story decisions. I will say though, I do like if I come to a decision and I'm not sure what to do, I try to roleplay it a little bit. Best example is choosing to keep the Necronomicon or burn it. The first time I played through Museum, and I was like, oh man, I have Daisy. What would I do? And part of me is like, well, she loves books, but I'm like, but also she knows the danger of a Necronomicon, and I'm like, I think she'd burn it. Like, and so. Because I had no idea what to choose at that point, so I tried to roleplay it a bit. But if it's like, which location should I go to? What monster should I shoot? I'm like, whatever, I'm going to do what's most efficient. So,
ignoring the fact that Daisy totes the Necronomicon around with her anyway.
Yeah, but it gives her horror. Like, she knows the feeling of a Necronomicon, what it does to a person. She's like, this book is powerful. I already have one. I can't handle two.
Yeah. It's fun too that it's not a clear thing. Like that's why I like RPing it, because it's not just like, oh, of course Daisy would do this, or Mark. Like, you have to think through it, which is part of the fun of it. Like, I remember for me, I was talking with Josh in our Discord chat about why I killed all the monsters in the house with Mark. I'm like, well, he's kind of this like destroy everything type person, and just, see the problem and get rid of it. So that's why he would do it. And Josh was like, well, I didn't do that because I see him more as like the haunted war veteran, and he wouldn't want to just, he's seen killing, so he wouldn't, up close, he wouldn't want to just destroy things without good reason. I was like, oh, that's actually an interesting way of thinking about the character. So I like that it can be interpreted and RP'd in different ways.
My Daisy run through Carcosa, she burned down the house, but because I decided to play her as Spaz Daisy. Like, she's just super terrified of everything. Oh my god, burn it! Oh my god, kill it! Ah! Like, so she ended up going insane in the sanitarium. So
yeah,
how fitting. Yeah.
There's only a couple times in play that I can remember role playing, and it was because I was really having a hard time figuring out what to do. But I think I mentioned last cast about where I had Jenny run back and attack the Spectre of Death, even though it was very risky to get the VP. And I'm like, I don't know what I should do. Yeah, Jenny would run back in with her 45s.
Mm-hmm. as like a tiebreaker in a moment of indecision.
Exactly.
I can see that. So how into the story itself are you guys find you're getting? I think Night of the Zealot caught me pretty well. I liked that story. Dunwich Legacy, I was into it. The Dunwich Horror is a cool little story, and it was kind of cool to see all the threads coming together there. But god damn it, if both of them don't just pale in comparison to Carcosa, because holy shit, this one has me by the balls.
Yeah. Hook, line, sinker, rod, reel, entire boat. Like, it's... I'm questioning my own reality after playing the Carcosa campaign.
And I want so much resolution to some of the shit we've seen and some of the questions that go unanswered, but I know ultimately that so many of those questions are going to remain nebulous after we resolve this thing.
Yeah, that's
like, we're never going to find out who the stranger actually is.
Yeah, that's one of the cool things I like that Matt does, and he even mentioned that whenever we interview. I'm like, well, there's certain things I don't want to answer because I want it to be kind of unresolved or open, which I think is true to the Lovecraft horror thing, and it adds much to it, And the reason I do find myself hooked into the story is because of the little touches like that too, that it would be easy to just phone it in and just write a story that's kind of just going to introduce each of these stories. But then we also get these little touches like, oh, there's a familiar cell for some reason, and constantly having these kind of little cameos or callbacks to past scenarios, like the Wolfman being in the asylum. So it's, I don't know. It's very cool. I don't necessarily read through the story over and over again for each campaign, because that would be a lot of rereading. But one thing I do find myself doing is after, or maybe every 3 campaigns or stuff, like, I haven't read these since the first time I played. Let me do that again. And I find often I pick out little things that I didn't notice the first time around.
Yeah. And definitely as the campaign goes on and some of those threads get a little resolved, at least. Especially in that dream sequence. There's a couple things I've now picked out in the dream sequence that I didn't catch the first time going through on... it's not the Palette Mask. What's the one before that? Phantom of Truth.
That dream
so is there anything peripherally you guys do when you sit down to play to add to the ambiance of the game? I'm going to imagine this is Ian's comment in the show notes here.
Yeah, I think this whole
Music?
section is mine.
Do you have a catacomb beneath your house where you play? Light any candles? You invite Brown Jenkin to sit on the corner and stare at you?
I mean, there's always Brown Jenkin, but...
If my daughter wasn't legitimately frightened of that statue you guys got me, I would bring it out and let it stare at me while I play.
I definitely don't do any kind of physical stuff like candles, lighting, whatever. The one thing I do is music, being a music guy, and I find it adds a lot to the experience. So I feel like I'm saying I find a ton today. I don't know why. Music is something I use a lot, and for actual playing, I'm not using the playlists I create because those are just more fun looking into the investigators and their mindset. But I use one bit of music that I use a lot lately is going through Spotify and finding playlists that are of like horror movies or epic movie scores. I had one that I forgot what it's called, like epic battle music, I think, that I used for Black Star's Rise, which is kind of this, the atmosphere of that scenario is this storm and all this crazy stuff happening and you're racing to the end, and the music accompanied that. So yeah, I like using music quite a bit.
I think the only time I actually use music in play is when I'm playing multiplayer. Most of the time when I'm playing by myself, I just kind of have like, I don't know, a TV show or a podcast running in the background. Yeah. But when I have people over, I'll throw on, there's a couple of cool, there's a cool playlist on Spotify that's literally called Arkham Horror Playlist or something like that. It's got like 100 some odd songs on there, and that's pretty good. There's also a couple of like hour or 2 hour long collections of basically kind of ambient noises more than music. It still kind of has a music like quality, but it's way more ambient than anything else. But there's like, I want to say 3 or 4 playlists, and each one of them is themed after a different elder god. So that's pretty cool. I turn on the Cthulhu one most of the time, but there's a couple different options out there.
I just listen to really normal music, like whatever I would normally listen to. Or if I have a podcast that I haven't like caught up on, and I'm like, especially if I'm replaying a scenario that I already know, like I can listen to the podcast and still go through the actions. If it's my blind run, I usually don't listen to anything. Maybe classical, but
I feel like there's a long chunk of time where I was just watching through IT Crowd episodes that I'd already seen, so I don't need to pay attention to it. But it was a fun counter to the darkness of Arkham.
I can just see you in curtain call when the last act flips. Help! Fire!
Dear sir or madam, fire!
I love that show.
I'll just put this over here with the rest of the fire.
I'll file this with the rest of the fire. Yeah.
And
anyway,
and Lita's like he's supposed to be in his room, talking about the Ghoul Priest. This game made me discover a whole genre of music, which is dark jazz. So if you're ever looking for something, look up dark jazz on Spotify.
Dark jazz?
Yeah.
What
It's kind of
separates dark jazz from normal jazz.
It's jazz, but if you find my Radio Arkham playlist on Spotify, that's basically mostly dark jazz, and it is obviously jazz that's somber in tone, and it tends to, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but it tends to sound like something you would hear in a horror movie or kind of ambient scenario, but it's using a lot of the classic jazz instruments.
All right, so then I think probably the last thing to touch on is just favorite game pimping. Like, I know we've touched on this before, but obviously an update is in order, because I've definitely accumulated new shit since the last time we talked about it. So you guys have any new game pimpage or any old game pimpage that you'd like to prop again?
I would say to anyone who hasn't yet pimped anything in their game, the number one thing you have to pimp is your chaos bag and the tokens. And
yep.
It's super easy to get. Like, there's a guy on our Discord, Kenji, Kengi. Yep. Who does custom bags, go on the pimp your game thing. I have to promote him. I've bought like 3 or 4 bags from him, and they're all excellent. We all own multiples.
Yes. If you prefer to not head into our Discord, though, you should. Geekcraft on Etsy would be the way to go.
Yeah. Go check out his bag. It's super customizable. Just like send him a message. He'll work with you. Incredibly high quality bags too. They sit open like a cup or something, which is crucial. And they have a draw close and everything. And then just get 20. You can either get 25 or 26 millimeter coin cases. Usually if you go to I went to a coin and stamp shop in my city. But yeah, 25 millimeter coin cases, you will not get the token back out. 26 millimeter, you will. So if you're okay putting your chaos token in one of those things and never having it come out without ruining it, 25 mil. But I went with 26. But just the clacking as you're drawing those tokens is just so satisfying. I don't know why.
Oh, it makes them so much more handleable too.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know about you guys, but before I did that, like I played this game a fuck ton when the core set came out. So like it got to a point where I could feel the built up finger grime on my paper chaos tokens. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure the finger grime is still there with the coin cases, but it doesn't feel gross or grimy.
And I found that sometimes the tokens stuck together once in a while. And so I'd be reaching in, I'd be like, oh, these are stuck together. I just have to, like, just flick them apart. But still, those coin cases, like, they can't stick together. So.
And then I suppose if you don't want to go that route, you can always grab, there's I think 2 really well-made Chaos Bag apps, at least on Android. I can't speak to iPhone. But those are available, too. And you can customize the bag on those ones and whatnot. I think one of the biggest pieces of pimpage that I want to mention is probably my most recent one that I got. I finally popped down on a couple of Mythos boards from Team Covenant, and goddamn, they're beautiful, and they work. They were bigger than I expected. Like, they have pictures of them, and I should have realized exactly how big they were. But when I pulled them out of the box, I'm like, damn, these things have presence.
They do.
But anyway. They're really cool. They hold the investigator card. If you have the Team Covenant tokens, they've got cool little slots above and below it to hold the damage and horror tokens. You can use the stock tokens in those holes. They still will fit, though it won't be quite as pretty. And then there's a big tray on the side to hold resources and clues and whatever else you happen to be wanting to do.
You know, I must say, for the first time ever in my gaming career, I do not like the Team Covenant tokens. And I've bought so many tokens from them. Like I buy 4-player sets for like Conquest. I bought like 3-player sets just so I'd have more than enough for 2 players to use my tokens. Like, and yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. See,
yeah.
I'm very per token with this set.
Yeah.
Their Doom tokens, I think, are some of the best work they've done in any game I've bought from them. Fucking love their Doom tokens. They sit on the board. They're big and colorful and scary as hell. The charge tokens, or the uses. I don't know what they call them. But anyway, the flip side of the coins that are meant to be charges and uses and supply tokens. There we go. That's what they call them. Those I really like. The resources I could take or leave. Like, mechanically they work fine, especially for two-handed, oddly enough, because you'll have the situation quite often where someone, because they're flip tokens, they have 1 on one side and 3 resources on the other. So when I'm playing two-handed, quite often I'll have someone fall down.
I'd kick this table by accident.
Fucking tokens.
I hate these tokens.
Well, I have the situation where one of my investigators will be sitting on 2 resources and the other one's sitting on 3.
Mm-hmm.
And during the resource phase, I just flip one of the ones over on the other investigator and take the one over to the other one, and it just, for some reason, that denomination just works really smoothly when you're playing two-handed. I don't know if that example actually illustrated that, but just take my word for it. For some reason, it works. But the design of them, I'm not in love with, and I'm pretty meh on the clue design as well. They don't really scream clues to me. So I was able to get in contact with Pirate Brom Tom, who gave us that really cool custom acrylic set for Arkham Knights, and he and I did a swag swap, and now I have my own set of those. So his little clue tokens are actually little magnifying glasses with clear acrylic in the middle, so they legit look like magnifying glasses, and I love them.
Yeah, I went all wooden tokens for mine, mostly through Meeple Source, I think. So I have bullets for guns. I have little books for charges, like spell books. I bought those metal coins from Greece, the custom Cthulhu coins.
Yep. That was going to be the next thing I mentioned.
Oh man, those things, that might be my favorite pimpage of this game, just because they are weighty. Like, they are hefty. They're awesome as
yeah,
resources.
and I use those specifically because Ian, those are the ones we passed by at Gen Con that one year. And I just got the silver ones that have the Elder Sign on one side and then a Cthulhu idol on the other side. And I use them expressly for action tracking. So I have the ones that we made, and I do love them. Yes. But, oh man, these ones look so good on the board. And do you guys do the thing? I have my 3 standard actions out for every investigator. But whenever you have an investigator that can take a special action or, Leo, I actually put another token on that card so I can kind of remember what's coming from where. Mm-hmm. Or like, for instance, for Daisy, I have an action tracker sitting on Daisy's investigator card for her tome action. To remind me when I've used that.
That's exactly what I do if it's something specific like that. If it's Leo, I just use a 4th one in my row. Because Leo's anything, right? But for like Finn, when he comes out, I'll have an action tracker on him as his little evade one.
Yeah, there's people who need certain special tokens. I haven't figured out anything good for Min, like in multiplayer where I need to track who's used that ability yet, but that's the area that could be explored for me. In addition to the things you guys already mentioned, because I use the coin cases and the Kenji bag and the Mythos board, so everything pretty much. The one special piece of pimpage I use is not for every investigator because it'd be too expensive, but I've made some custom Hero Forge minis for certain investigators. For those who don't know Hero Forge, lets you just hop on their site and design a mini using the kind of different parts that they have. And so I made one for Jenny so far, Jim, and Safina. So basically the ones, because back when this game first started, I bought a batch of the pre-painted ones that FFG made a long time ago, which aren't great quality, but there's something. From far away, it doesn't matter. But because it was a while ago, most of those minis are out of print. So for the people, the investigators that don't have them, I've made some, and for the investigators that are my favorite, like Jenny. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think the last one I'd mentioned, kind of piggybacking on that, if you're looking to pimp out the mini token or whatever you're using to represent your investigator on the board, a user in our Discord, Julius, who runs, I want to say it's the One Player Podcast. God, I'm sorry, I can't remember the actual name of his podcast. I've listened to a couple episodes, but he went out and made a custom set of minis. So they're basically like little wooden cardboard chits that are probably about a 1/4 of the size of the actual investigator card. Currently, he has those out there for all the investigators that have released up through Carcosa before the novellas. And then part of this custom project on the Board Game Maker website that you could go and get ordered, they also have really cool little simple location connectors, which I use for maps that I haven't yet familiarized myself with. And or I do it when I'm playing with other people who aren't as familiar with the game as I am. So that is something I would definitely recommend. We have the link to that if that's something you're interested in. We have the link to that in our Discord, pinned in the Pimp Your Game channel. Oh, I think it was something like $20 after shipping, and it came with all the little investigator bits. It came with the location connectors, and it also came with a couple of really cool reminder cards for unspent XP.
Yeah.
Yep, so that you can actually add unspent XP cards to your deck to remind yourself that you do have that.
And trauma.
And also mental and physical trauma.
Which is super easy to forget sometimes. So
yeah.
Those are great.
So it's really cool to just have that in the deck, so that way when you're setting up, you go, oh, here's this mental trauma card. I'll add that horror right now.
One of the tokens I liked, especially in those, is the Rougarou, what's the snake in the museum?
Hunting
horror, and the broods. And so instead of having the Rougarou, when he has all these attachments, if you're playing 4-player, all this damage tokens on him, whatever, you put him off to the side and you keep track of everything on there, and you just have this little cardboard chit that is easy to move around the map. Same thing with hunting horror, and then the broods as well. You can line them up 1 through 5, and he has 5 brood tokens named or numbered 1 through 5, so you can move them around. And that, man, what a quality of life improvement! Yeah, like just that total creature comfort.
So goddamn handy for those persistent enemies,
especially when it's like this enemy has 20 health, and you're like, okay, so I'm going to be piling up wooden tokens, and they have like 4 treacheries attached to them. Like it's just.
So that's one that I think might not be widely broadcasted and advertised as some of the other stuff we've mentioned. So that's one I would definitely recommend people take a look at if that sounds appealing.
Yeah, the one final and recent piece of pimpage I had is because I used the Covenant tokens, and I've learned to really love them. But using the supply tokens for bullets is just unsatisfying to me. I'm fine with it for the rest, like abstract supplies and even spell charges, but I'm like, I need something. So I actually got they're bullets that are meant for the board game Zombies, which people may or may not be familiar with. But they're just it was pretty cheap, like $5 or something, and there's like a ton of bullets in there. And the thing I like about these ones is they're like plastic, they're in the shape of bullets, they're 3D, they're not flat ones. But the thing I like about them compared to some others I saw is that they're very small, so they can fit on a card without taking up too much space.
All right. Well, any final thoughts? Any game bending or pimpage that you'd like to recommend that people try out that we haven't mentioned yet?
I don't think so.
No, I think that's about it.
All right. So then, let's move it on to a high and tight tentacle time here. I know we've gone a little long this afternoon, as it goes. So the one thing I'm actually going to be super quick because I was going to mention that I've recently gotten into Bloodborne. After so many people have recommended it to me, it finally became free for PlayStation Plus members, so I had absolutely no excuse not to do it. I'll elaborate more next episode when Nick's here, because Nick's been one of the people who's been recommending it to me most excitedly. But I'm hardcore into it. I don't know why. It's completely the opposite kind of game that I normally enjoy. Honestly, I wouldn't even say I'm enjoying it, but it's so goddamn rewarding, and the world itself is so captivating that I can't put it down. So that's where I'm at the moment. It's weird. I've never had this kind of relationship with a game before.
I know, I was laughing because I've just seen you in our general off-topic chat just like ranting about Bloodborne over and over.
Yeah. Makes me really not want to play Bloodborne.
For me, I can also be very quick. I'm just going to shout out a new podcast I started listening to called Tomes and Tentacles. This is one of my favorite types of podcasts to listen to, are RP play, where people are playing an RPG and recording their sessions. If they're good, they can be very, very entertaining, and this is a very, very good one. They are playing Call of Cthulhu 7th edition, and it just started recently, so there's like 5 episodes. I'm close to the end of the second one, but the production quality is super good. The RP quality is super good. Like, these are people who are really... know how to play an RPG, so it's almost like listening to a radio play. So I would recommend checking that out. And the fun thing is that the campaign they're playing out right now happens to start in Arkham Theater and happens to be focused around a certain play.
Interesting.
So it might be a good time for people to check out Tomes and Tentacles.
Scott?
For mine, I can be super quick. So, new expansion for Hearthstone got announced, but I'm going to save all that talk for when Nick is here, because you guys don't do the Hearthstone stuff. I'm just going to be talking to an empty void. I started playing a new game, and I've talked to Dan, who's listening right now. Into the Breach. It's by the same guys that made FTL, or Faster Than Light. And it's this cool little, you're on an 8x8 grid, you have 3 mechs, and you're going through a campaign, and you can, basically you get reputation that you can spend and like enhance your mechs, but each mech does something different, like they move differently or they fire differently, and you usually have 3 different classes of mech, and you're fighting these bugs, the Vex. Anyways, it has got me hook, line, and sinker. If you ever played like Advanced Wars on Game Boy or whatever, or any kind of grid-based combat, super awesome. Highly recommend it. Yeah, it's a super fun game.
Sounds fun.
All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to wrap this up for our early morning. Well, it was early morning. St. Patty's Day recording.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Happy St. Patty's
As
Day.
ever. Yeah, right?
Oh, yeah.
Have a very green holiday.
I'm a parent now,
green.
so...
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'm kind of a European mutt, and a normal American where like, hey, I'm of Irish ancestry, but I don't actually really know anything or have any contact with any actual ancestors from Ireland. But
yeah,
I'll drink some beer.
Oh, hey, super quick.
It'll be good.
Dan just said in chat, if you buy Into the Breach right now, they're including free copies of FTL, and FTL was amazing. So, 2 for 1.
Interesting.
Yeah, pick it up.
Well, on that note, I'll remind everyone that we didn't have any calls this week, but if you have any quements or would like to suggest a discussion topic, please do call the Mythos Busters hotline at 203-493-MYTH. That's 203-493-6984. Check out those more recent episodes of the Miskatonic AV Club. Hopefully we'll have another night where we can find some time to bust out a few more, get through Dunwich, and start in on Carcosa. And of course, join our Discord, find us on Facebook, and just generally come and say hi. We like interacting with the community, and the community's awesome. So, yeah. I think that's going to wrap it up for episode 35, guys. We'll see you next time on Mythos Busters.